What's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America's show. I'm your host, Rob Norm. We got a debate lined up tonight on the Crucible. It should be interesting. Now, there are topics I would definitely want to talk about more than what we'll be talking about this evening, but what are you going to do? I'm looking forward to the debate. So I'll explain a little what went into it. My plan is to win the debate so convincingly that only a DC jury could think that I lost. The Sussman trial, what a joke. What a two-tier justice system. Flynn gets accused of lying to the FBI, and even when the prosecution drops the case, the judge says, nope, it must go on. Sussman gets proven to lie to the FBI, and the jurors say, lying to the FBI is not that big of a deal. That's what one of the jurors allegedly said afterwards. There's more important things to focus on. Also, we hear about the Russia investigation and the Mueller investigation was, they got him. They got people for lying to the FBI. Which a DC jury says, well, that's no big deal. It was clear cut, but we'll talk about this more tomorrow. But hilariously, I guess the implication would be if Sussman didn't lie to the FBI, okay, so then the FBI lied when they said Sussman lied to the FBI, right? Their whole argument was, we didn't know this guy was working for Hillary's team. Now, they admitted in the trial that they knew the entire Alpha Bank story was bullshit. And higher-ups at the FBI still wanted this investigation to start, the Comeys and McCabe's of the world. That was admitted by FBI agents at the trial. They just said, had they known that it was coming from the Clinton camp, which they did know, of course they did, that maybe they wouldn't have used it. Okay. Well, the jury clearly feels the FBI did know, and so that they lied. I'm doing great. We won't be talking fishing tonight, Crisco, though I did have an offer to go fishing this weekend on a charter boat, but I'm busy. I got some stuff going on now. But I'm doing great. I'm happy that you all are here. So, won't be talking about the Sussman trial much. This debate will be on student loan forgiveness. I'm against it. Now, I'll explain how this debate came up and what to expect from tonight. So, my favorite place to debate online currently is the Crucible. I think, despite the fact that Andrew, or Big Papa Fascist, whatever you want to call him, that and Pedro that run the Crucible are conservative, more along the lines of, we don't agree on everything, but more closely aligned with me politically than almost any other political streamers that host these sort of debates. That's not why it's my favorite platform to debate on, because even left-wingers that despise Andrew or BPF's political positions agree that he and the Crucible is pretty much the best moderation out there. I also like one-on-one debates far more than panel debates, which they specialize in. So I always jump at the opportunity, if I have free time, to debate on the Crucible. What they're doing this week, they have a Discord channel and other things. Well, that might be true, Rated Ray. But here's the thing. The debate isn't just about the person I'm talking to. It's also about the audience. And believe it or not, I have convinced even left-wing members of some of these audiences that my position was the correct position. And certainly independent and people that aren't rabid lefters, I think that I consistently show a good showing. But we shall see. Now, one of the things the Crucible does, like most platforms, they have a Discord channel, and they actually use their Discord channel a lot, and there's a lot of people just like you that are just people that chat on the live streams or chat through the Discord. And so what they're trying to do this week is to encourage new people that previously haven't streamed to go ahead and have an opportunity to jump in debating against a lot of us that have been debating quite often. And so I believe the way it's working is Andrew's asking people that haven't debated before, pick someone out that you would like to debate. We'll come up with a topic. You could debate them. So I'll be debating someone. Their Twitter handle is Heathen. I believe they go by the name Garet. I know very little about Garet. He reached out and apparently wanted to debate me. He was very polite in his interactions with me behind the scenes. The first topic he asked me about was student loan forgiveness. I said that basically I'm against it, although there are small reservations. Like, I don't mind some of the current policies that say that if you do work for a nonprofit, etc., for an extended amount of time, like 10 years, while consistently meeting your payments, that we can forgive some of that loan. But in general, I'm against the loan forgiveness programs that you see Biden or Bernie pushing. He said, great, that's a good topic that we would have much to disagree with. So I assume he will be for student loan forgiveness in one way or another. So we'll hash that out. Now, I got to be honest, despite the fact that this was a topic on a panel that I did a month ago or so, I haven't done much research into this topic. I just have my ideology. I know some about it. I'm confident in my position, but I've been these debates that occur on Mondays and Tuesdays are difficult for me because I do work all day, so I'm getting off the clock now and I'm coming on. So no excuses though. I'm prepared for the debate. I think that it'll be a good one. I don't know what to expect because this isn't a person I've ever interacted with. My feeling is that there will be a lot of emotional response from Garet that young people are being screwed over in this economy, and so we need to do something to help them out. That's not a bad feeling to have, but I think that loan forgiveness disproportionately helps the wealthy, and it's not the correct way to go. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. We can see where it goes, but I'm going to try, as always, when I interact with someone new, to reciprocate their energy. If it's a polite conversation where we're letting each other talk, no one's yelling or insulting, I will reciprocate. If it gets hairy and name-calling, I guess I could do that as well. But I'm trying to put my best foot forward as far as that goes. But I'm excited, and I do like the idea of this sort of format of bringing new people into the fold. Who knows, maybe I'll get my ass kicked. Maybe this person will be amazing. It's great. No skin off my back. He's generally chill in Discord. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't understand what... It's something that it always amazed me. People are afraid to admit when they're wrong, or they're afraid that they'll lose an argument or something. I'm not. Now, listen, you might say, Rob, you don't admit you're wrong a lot. Well, I don't think I'm wrong a lot. But the times that I know that I am, I'll admit it. We're all biased. We're all going to think we did better than we actually do in real life. That's because we're us, and we prefer the arguments we ourselves make, or prefer the things we ourselves do. We probably like ourselves. Hopefully you like yourself, and so you're going to think you're doing better than maybe the objective person would. But nonetheless, I think I do objectively well. I only bring this up to say, I say this all the time. I don't mind debating someone who has no following. That's irrelevant to me, or that I know little about. Because what's the worst that could happen? That they'll make a bunch of points that I'm like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. And then I'll change my mind. Or I'll say, okay, I got to look into this more so I'm more competent the next time I'm debating them. I don't mind that. Yeah, it'll be interesting. You never know what could happen. Maybe he's been busting his ass for 2 weeks on this topic and he's just ready to crush me. Who knows? But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a reasonable discussion. Just my gut feeling on this is I don't think it's going to get heated and yelling and screaming and things like that. Hopefully I'm able to kind of get him to come toward my side of the position, and hopefully people that agree with him will watch this in retrospect and understand why student loan forgiveness is another one of those policies that from your heart sounds good. Oh, yeah, noble students trying to do well. But I don't think it's quite that. Beth Akers, I'm not familiar with it. What does BPF say about me debating Vosh on the Crucible? Vosh at one point was a guest on the Crucible for a Q&A. Audience members asked if he would debate me. He said that he'd have to think about it because I'm just right-wing talking points. Offers have been proffered from BPF and other people to moderate, and other moderators to moderate a debate with Vosh. He has not accepted. So I'm sure BPF would love to have me debate Vosh. I'm sure he would absolutely love it. He'd love to have me debate Destiny. Destiny said he wants to debate me on the Burisma stuff. Whatever you think of Vosh and Destiny, I think much lower of Vosh than I do Destiny. But they bring in views, and at least they're talked about as competent debaters. I think Destiny is. I think Vosh is a sophist, but yeah, probably not Alley Cat. It'll probably come down to that, basically. Yeah, I mean, I think less of Destiny here the past couple days after I've seen clips of him from a couple years ago talking about violence against conservatives. Like I said, one of my first interactions with Destiny was him suggesting that rioting and voting are two sides of the same coin. That's what he said as the George Floyd riots were just beginning. So, I think that shit sucks. But he's never done anything to me personally. I can say the same about Vosh. Neither of them have personally ever done anything to me that I thought was unethical or anything like that. But anyways, I'm going to see... I don't follow all the drama either, just so people know. All right, I think you're going to lose me visually here for a minute. We're going to do a sound check, stuff like that. Get ready to go. So give me a second. Check, check, check.
Hang on just a second. Rob, you can mute this stream for a minute. I'm going to help Garrett get through some technical difficulties.
No problem, no problem. Hey, if you could hear me, Andrew, give me a thumbs up when you're ready for me. All right, give me a second. Oh, maybe they're ready for me. I'm sorry, did you... Okay. Anyways, technical issues. That's something I should have predicted. Because if you're new to streaming, I still have technical difficulties, and if you don't stream very often.
Are you there? Got audio from me?
It probably becomes very difficult to... So I'm going to mute there so you can't hear them, but I'll be able to. But yeah. Hey, I'm a boomer. Let's not make fun of boomers. So thanks, Gizmo. Thanks for the donation. I really appreciate it, man. Gizmo, one of my favorite people. But yeah, hopefully we get this worked out. Also, I want to mention BPF does these fun debates called randomizer debates. There's mini topics that are designed to be funny. So last time I debated Sonsel in the first match of these, and I did defend being a communist and all sorts of things. He makes you defend positions that he knows that you're not. It's not representative of who you are. I thought it was a lot of fun. Apparently, at some point this week, I'll be doing that. Also on the table is I'm supposed to be interviewing BPF's wife, who's going to be on Tucker Carlson again, talking about Roe v. Wade. So all of that's supposed to be occurring this week, next week, or something like that. Yeah, I thought that debate with Sonsel was really fun as well. And what are my thoughts on Uvalde police no longer cooperating with the shooting investigation? I think it's despicable, but I understand it, right? At this point, they understand that there's going to be possible civil and criminal charges possibly offered at some people in their department, and so they're probably all lawyering up. So I understand to protect your own ass why you would do it, but it's a really bad look. Not only that they allowed this shooting to occur in the way that it did, and we're getting kind of stories that are contradictory and doesn't look good for the police department. So I think it's despicable. Well, there we go. All right, so his but yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's what I think. So he's got his mic working. Now he's trying to get his headset. So, all right, we're going to be getting ready. He's just dealing with some tech issues. So.
Rob, are you there?
I am. Oh.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and get the show moving then.
Can you guys both hear me?
Yeah, we got you. We got you loud and clear. So I'm going to.
Thanks for being on here, Garrett. Looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Yeah, I am too. It's nice to meet you.
Yep, great to meet you.
We're gonna get moving here, guys. We are at the appointed time. Oh yeah, one last thing, Rob. You're not banned from Twitch yet, right?
Not yet. I'm
Not yet.
still going. You know what I did the
I-
other day? I did a clip of Destiny and then realized, like, oh shit, you got to take that. That video got deleted real quick. But
Yeah, just check it. You know what I
Yep,
mean?
I'm still in good
kinda on a war
standing.
path these days. So.
I kind of hope this guy hands me my ass. I'll be honest. So, all right, here we go. I'm going to be silent.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Crucible. I'm your host, Andrew Wilson. Tonight we've got Garet, and he's going up against Rob Noor. This is the first day of our community debates, where the folks who like to hang out and kind of argue and talk in the Discord all volunteered. They want to have their Balboa moment, right? They go up against some of the heaviest hitters who are around in the Twitch YouTube sphere, and we're going to give them that opportunity. I'm sure we're all looking forward to it. Make sure before the debate starts that you smash that like button, right? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure you hit that notification bell too, because what I've been hearing from a lot of people is that they're not getting the notifications, and that's because YouTube hates us, so they take people off of the notification list because they're a bunch of bastards sometimes. So make sure that you do all of that good jazz. We'll be back in just a second with our debaters. And here we go. Probably a little over the top on the music for what this debate may actually end up being. But you know what? It's not a Crucible debate unless it at least sounds like there's going to be some good bloodletting, right? That's the way that it works. I did notice in the chat leading in, Garet, careful, Noor has the high ground going with the Star Wars theme of the thumbnail. I thought that was pretty classy, you know? So, Rob Noor, take a second, introduce yourself. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, my name's Rob Knorr. I'm a populist conservative. I think my big issue that I like to talk about the most is corruption that we see within our system. Sussman trial today showed that again, didn't it? You can find me on twitch.tv/Rob Knorr, all one word, lowercase ROBNOERR, as you see it spelled on the screen. Also on YouTube and other platforms at Normal America with Rob Knorr. It's great to be here as always.
Yeah, the Crucible is always happy to see Rob, longtime friend of the community. He helped us out when we were first starting. We always appreciate that. Garrett, a longtime member of the Discord, always in there stirring up trouble, causing me all kinds of headaches and issues and problems. But now you're here so that I can be as biased as I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Take a second, introduce yourself, tell everyone what you're about.
So I'm Garrett. I have a YouTube channel that I just started a few weeks ago called Heathens. And it's called that because Andrew wouldn't stop calling me a heathen in the Discord chat, being the bastard that he is. But it's all in good fun. And I have to say, I love the Star Wars thumbnails. The lightsaber battles and the space battles are typically the best of Star Wars, at least with guys, right? And Jay Freak, how do you know I don't have the high ground? You're making an assumption there, aren't you?
Well, I mean, Anakin thought so too, and we know what happened to him now, don't we? So anyway, back to the debate, gentlemen. Tonight we're going to be going over student loan debt. Whether or not we stay completely on that topic for a full hour and a half, I don't know. I'm sure it'll stray a little bit, and I'm going to grant a lot of leeway, as I think that this is Garrett's first formal debate, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I'm super excited for it, and Rob, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you, Andrew, for letting me on the Crucible. I appreciate it.
Yeah, most certainly, most certainly. So, Rob, why don't you go ahead and open, and then we'll move over to Garrett. Go ahead.
Let me start by saying the police have someone pulled outside, right outside my window. So that blinking is not me. I did not do anything, just so everyone knows. Yeah, it's
the glow
great
of a lightsaber, brother.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, Garrett, I think this is a great idea, getting more people involved in these debates. I think sometimes these conversations could be the best. And oftentimes what you find is people that debate a lot of topics like me, sometimes you can get your ass handed to you by someone who doesn't feel as comfortable debating at first, but has a substantial knowledge of a topic. So I always look forward to things like this. I think it'll be a lot of fun. You want me to jump into my opening statement on student loan forgiveness? Okay. Yeah, so when it comes to this topic, I think that what we see is there is a lot of people that have big hearts that think that we could just basically print infinite money or forgive debt for certain groups of people that we would say traditionally seem to be people that are struggling financially or struggling with other things, and that it'll all work out. The reality is nothing is free. We see that with the current inflation we're in today, as trillions upon trillions of dollars are printed, and we're told that this will help the poorest and lower class of us. We can see that almost every time, as with the COVID stimulus, what ends up happening is that it is a transfer of wealth for the poor and working class to the wealthy. And this would be no different. Evidence shows that if we were to have student loan forgiveness, it would actually end up benefiting predominantly white people, if you want to look at it through a racial lens, but it certainly would end up predominantly benefiting people that tend to be more well-to-do financially. Groups that would be screwed over would be working class people that dropped out of high school or went immediately from high school to working, like many of the people where I live in rural Pennsylvania. They've done everything right. They didn't rack up a bunch of debt, and yet their taxes would increase and the value of the dollar would go down for them, just so people that are traditionally making more money, those who went to universities, which we could see traditionally make on average about $14,000 a year more than those that don't go to university. And so those people are the ones that would benefit, the ones that traditionally are making more money. In addition, if we had complete student loan forgiveness or even a partial student loan forgiveness, what we would see is that this will encourage more people to go to a university system that I justifiably think is sick. And when I say sick, I mean unhealthy. It is not teaching people. We're getting worse and worse outcomes as far as the quality of education, and yet prices go up. If we would forgive this debt, there is no price control that would mean that universities would end up costing less. In fact, what we can see is since the government got involved with student loans in the 70s, we can see that the price of university and tuition has exponentially gone up. I believe in the 70s, it was some early 70s, I believe, for a semester of college, it was something like on average $1,200. Now we can see that we're in the tens of thousands of dollars. This is because the government got involved. again, oftentimes what you see is, although socialists may think with their heart, what ends up happening is the very people they claim to want to help are the ones that pay the burden of this worse. Additionally, a lot of people that would benefit for this, let's be honest, are people like I was. It took me about 8 to 9 years to get an undergraduate degree. I now have a graduate degree. You know what I was doing for 8 to 9 years? Getting shit-faced. And I was using my student loan refund many times to do so. There are millions of people that do that get this money and use it to do all kinds of, things that they personally want to do. Go on vacation, buy a sound system, go to the bar. It should not be on the American people to pay for me or to pay for those sorts of people. I was adult enough to know what those loans were, or I should have been when I took them out. It is my responsibility to pay them back. And if we have a system that says that we're going to arbitrarily forgive people for these sorts of things, it will encourage this sort of poor behavior to continue going forth. There are options for people that have these debts to have them forgiven. For example, you could work for nonprofits for 10 years while making your payments, which could forgive a lot of that loans. Or you could proceed to use your degree and get a second job and things like that to pay off your obligation. But there's no reason that we should prioritize one group of people that would primarily be those that are earning more anyways, than, say, giving debt forgiveness to people below a certain line that have mortgages. People that didn't go to college but do jobs that we find are very important, such as carpenters or people working on roads or something like that. Why shouldn't they be given debt forgiveness if we're going to give debt forgiveness to people who traditionally come from more well-to-do families? Because remember, overwhelmingly, the people that go to college, and although it's getting to lower economic demographics, it still tends to be that the people of the poorest communities don't go to college, and so they're the ones that will be not benefiting and in fact be harmful paying this back. So at the end of the day, I think that it seems to be a well-hearted, big-hearted policy. It would be a disaster. It will benefit the wealthy. The last thing I'll say is, if we're talking about free university, all that will do will make a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, depending on how free it would be, how long you want to go. It'll just become the equivalent of the high school degree. And so right now we see people that don't have a high school degree and that significantly harms them in looking for jobs. Now we'll just push that back another 4 years. It'll just be another 4 years of education that's basically just indoctrination of people into left-wing causes, that they'll have to go through that just to get at the floor level to be able to compete with other people. So at the end of the day, I think this is a disastrous policy. It benefits the exact people that we shouldn't be trying to benefit. It makes things worse because it encourages bad behavior. It will cause inflation and harm every American. And it sets a bad precedent that we could just print money and do these things without looking at the repercussions that we see in the future.
Rob, thanks for that opening statement. I see your super chat there, Omar. Anybody who wants to send a super chat in, we'll kind of tactically sneak them in throughout the course of this debate, especially if it's to make fun of Garet. Those are my favorite kind of new super chats, even though we haven't had a one yet. I got a feeling it's coming, Garet. I got a feeling, buddy. You're up. 5 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
Awesome. All right. So I think all student loan debt that fits within a couple of scenarios, or the following scenarios, should be forgiven, and any college education that also fits within these scenarios should be taxpayer funded without student loans. So those would include any debt from a for-profit college that was shut down due to fraud or otherwise illegal activity. I don't think students should be held responsible if the college that they were going to, that they were attending, decided to break the law and get shut down before they could graduate. And any debt from a state-funded college, including community colleges and trade schools, should be forgiven, and the education should be taxpayer-funded. That's all I need for an opening argument. I'd rather get into it with Rob.
So it's like, come with an opening statement prepared. He's like, I just got 2 points, and let's just dig into it. It's like, I allocate all this time for you guys, and this is the way that you can treat me. The floor is open. Rob, go ahead.
Okay, so on the fraud thing first, who do you think should pay for that? Should the American people pay for that, or should the company that engaged in fraud reimburse those people?
Oh, the company that paid for it. But what if the company went bankrupt, like ITT Tech? Like, where does the money come from, since they don't have any?
It's an interesting question, right? Bankruptcy law is very complex, and you don't want to see people holding the bag that did the right thing, that tried to go to a university, and then through fraud, that university ended up misleading. So yeah, absolutely, the business should pay first. I guess I don't have a problem with the state trying to recompense those people. I question exactly how that would be done, because it seems difficult to say that the American people should be on the hook for sort of, what some fraudulent company did. But it's something I'd have to think carefully about. I think that that's such a fringe sort of part of what we're talking about with loan forgiveness. But yeah, I mean, it's something I would have to think about, I guess.
The bigger one for me is state-funded colleges and trade schools, and community colleges. So that would automatically exclude any Ivy Leagues, any for-profit colleges. Right now, there's around 200 for-profit colleges getting federal funding from the government, and that's in the form of student loans. And then presumably the student pays it back. But since the for-profit college in question is charging 4 to 5 times as much as like a regular state-funded college is charging. So for example, where I live, if you want to get a nursing degree at the local state college, it's around 10 grand, and that's it. And that's start to finish.
So I'm confused.
Like 3 years.
You want to offer forgiveness and free college to any state-funded school,
specifically state-funded schools.
Okay, so the first thing,
and trade schools.
Okay, so the first thing to say is this: those Ivy League schools that you're talking about, they also get federal tax dollars and state tax dollars, many of them. So would that mean, or you mean? Do you mean just Okay, so you're saying no federal dollars should go to any university except state universities. So in my state, it would be Penn State, Clarion University, those sorts of universities. No other state like Pitt University or Temple that aren't state universities, they should get zero federal tax dollars, is your argument?
So Harvard, let's use Harvard as an example. Harvard is not just Harvard Law. There's also Harvard Medicine, and they get a lot of money in research, for research and development. I'm fine with that because that money is actually being used for research and development. But any funding for tuition, I don't think that they should have that. I think that should be entirely funded by the rich families that are going to those colleges.
I don't really disagree on this point. I think for various reasons. I would like to see, believe it or not, the university system go the way of the dinosaur. I think that in the future, the university system is so corrupt with sort of communism and Marxism and indoctrination that I think it's doing more harm than good. That doesn't mean that there aren't fields that we need higher ed for, but I think in the future, what I would like to see is more of competency tests. So for example, we already have the bar to be a lawyer. We have tests and exams that you have to pass to be an engineer. I think that I would like to see those crafted in such a way that it ensures a 95% failure rate or whatever the amount of people that they want to filter out. And then instead of going to a university to learn the skills to pass that exam, you would go to basically what would be a private tutor, or it could be a public tutor that would teach you just what you need for that curriculum. And you wouldn't have to take all these ridiculous gender study classes and all these ridiculous courses to be able to pass. Unfortunately, a radical solution like that is necessary, in my opinion, because the university system has been so indoctrinated and corrupted. So your plan of let's not give federal tax dollars, yeah, I'm all for that. Totally agree. Let's not give federal tax dollars. So I guess then the meat of our discussion will be the state schools. Should that be provided free? Does that seem fair?
Before you move into framing, I want to make sure that I got correct what you're agreeing to here. So Garet, you said that you think that the kind of Ivy League schools should be non-state funded and that they should just be paid for via the private tuition of the richies who are going to them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and Rob, you're pretty much conceding that that's okay with you, right?
Yeah, no problem. That is more... It's ironically more the position that I would expect someone on my side of the debate to be coming from, that the state shouldn't be involved in education as much. So I'm happy to see, at least on that framework, he's with me, that the state should be less involved when it comes to higher ed and those sorts of things.
So we'll have communist shit. He's trying to soak the rich. Don't fucking believe a word of it. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure that you guys had the premise set before you moved in. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so with the state school, so I could say this. I went to a state school. My undergrad degree was from Clarion University. It was a state school. I don't understand why my loan should be forgiven and be forced to be paid by people that didn't go to that state school, it would still be basically a benefit to wealthier people that went to these schools, because the average person that's getting a degree or going to college, forgiving their student loan debt, would, as most evidence shows, benefits predominantly wealthier people than poor people. Why should we benefit them as opposed to someone who never went to a state school, got a job immediately, and they're not going to get that sort of benefit?
So I don't like answering a question with a question, but I do have a question.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
So middle class and poor people, there's more of them than there are of rich people, right?
Sure.
Arguably. So if tuition was taxpayer funded without student loans, I'm being very clear in how I say that. It's not free. Now, the thing is, everyone pays into those taxes, regardless of whether you're rich, middle class, or poor. Like, you pay in to that system to a greater or lesser extent. And there are more of us than of them. If you want to paint it into an us and them scenario, I'm fine with that kind of framing. But the biggest benefit of this to me is maintaining the United States as the number one in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, so STEM classes. So I have a bunch of possible compromises that I am okay with, such as state college only being paid for by taxpayers if you're going for a STEM degree, or having income restrictions. So if you want to exclude the rich, it was my understanding that most of the rich go to the Ivy League schools anyways, but if I'm wrong on that, then I'm wrong on that. That's completely fine.
Well, it's not just the rich, right? So, for example, let's say me and you both we both have similar families, grew up in the same town. You decide to go even to a state school and I don't. The evidence shows that over the course of your life, because you went to university, you're more likely to make far more money than me, to the tune of, on average, $14,000 more a year. So why should I, who didn't go, even if I had the opportunity and it would have been free, I chose not to, why should my tax dollars go into paying for you when you're going to do better than me financially anyway? So it's not just a question of the rich Ivy League person. What you're doing is the poorest working class people that have done everything right, that saved, that didn't take this massive debt, now they're going to be responsible for paying people that did take debt. And I don't think that that's a system that would be fair to those people.
So if the state college is paid for by the taxpayers, do you think that would motivate more people to go?
I don't know. It's certainly, I would say yes, it would motivate more people to go, but it would be people going for the right reason? I don't know. Right? For example, if anything's free, more people will partake in it, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a benefit to the people partaking in it. And certainly there will be people that still won't go. For example, people that aren't some of the smartest people I know aren't book smart at all. They struggled mightily through high school. And yet if you need your engine repaired, or if you need someone to put shingles on your roof, they're the smartest people in the world. Many of those people would choose not to go to universities, maybe choose to not even go to a trade school. So they're going to be left holding the bag, even though traditionally they'll make less money over their lifetime than the people that would go to that university.
So the main logical thought process I have for this is, and I realize that there are a growing number of people that are against the idea of the public school system. However, the public school system is taxpayer funded through obviously real estate taxes. Now, I look at state funded colleges as equal to or very similar to the public school system. If you think I'm wrong on that, that's totally fine, but they seem to be pretty similar in terms of how they're set up and what the goal is, which is for a solid education, preferably in the STEM degrees, which is what I'm primarily advocating for.
So there's two things to say here. First, you're crafting this in a way that's going to sound appealing to someone like me that has a problem with the university system. But the problem is, when the state controls this, they're not going to control it in the way that you like. For example, we see with Title IX. Title IX was innocuous and passed, and it was, well, we just want women to be able to participate in sports. Now, Title IX is being used today to say schools that don't allow biological males to be in restrooms with biological females will no longer get federal tax dollars. And we see sort of the education system and public education being corrupted. We're told, oh, it's public education, it's reading, it's writing, it's math. But no, it's pushing all of this indoctrination. So I refuse to believe, despite your best intentions, that the way that this would be implemented would be just, oh, we're just strictly teaching math, we're just strictly teaching engineering. I don't think that'll be the case. When we allow the government to get massively involved in things, it ends up being a mess almost every time. And we can see what happens when we allow the government to get massively involved. The same sort of reasonable arguments you're making now were the arguments people would have been making in the 70s. Oh, if the government guarantees these loans, won't it mean that poor people will have more of an opportunity to go to university? Won't that mean that we'll be the leaders in STEM? And we see the unintended consequences where a poor person like me used to be able to get a job while I was in school and use that to pay for university. Now I have to sell away like 20 years of my future. And it was based on good intentions like yours, but the way it's implemented will almost always be a disaster.
So I think that just comes down to how the legislation is written, and that can account for what you're talking about. Now, does that mean there was not mistakes made in the 70s? Obviously there was, because the shit show that's going on right now is pretty intolerable. And I don't think it's a good idea to force someone to sign away, basically debt slavery.
But it's not forcing. No one's being forced. No one's being forced.
Yes, it's going to college as a choice, and I think that's why I think motivating people to do it, removing obstacles. This is one of the major obstacles in the way of people going to college. I know, like, I didn't go to college really. I went to a community college for a few years, and life happened, and I wasn't able to finish. And I'm fine with that debt. Like, that's whatever, like I don't have a problem with it. Like, that was my decision. But in terms of just removing the obstacles for future generations, we are in danger as a country of falling behind in those STEM fields. Everyone doesn't like China. The United States estimated that they had 1.6 million STEM graduates, which was more than 30% of how many were enrolled that year. Like, these are just what I've read. I could be wrong on it, so that's fine. India had 2.7 million. That was around 33%. Germany was at 37% of their graduates being in STEM fields, and we are less than 20%. So this is a huge problem, and we already have a shortage of STEM graduates to fill the jobs that are out there, and that shortage is probably going to continue to grow over the next several years. So I think looking at each obstacle that's in the way of students trying to go to college in these fields should be looked at carefully and hopefully eliminated. And if the money is the problem, then I don't see why taxpayers can't fund that. Now, that doesn't mean raising taxes. The government spends money all the time, as you're well aware, and I'm not advocating for just printing more money and further devaluing the currency and making things more difficult. I'm more talking about a reallotment or a reallocation of resources from something else to this, because higher education is so important.
Okay, so first off, I think most of what you're saying hinges on the idea that there's an obstacle, that the cost is an obstacle. But this sort of goes against, I'm not saying you've made this argument, but it goes against the argument that most people that push for student loan forgiveness make, which is all of these people, these young people jump into this, and it's so easy for them to get these loans, they don't understand the implications. And I sort of agree with this part of that diagnosis, which is, I don't think there is a big obstacle like you're saying. I think that young people, it's tragic that some people get into it without understanding the implications, but there's no obstacle. If you want to go to university, someone will give you a loan. The government will give you a loan. Now, you might say, but that's bad, then they have to pay it back. But that solves the problem that you're talking about, which is, well, there's a lot of people, because you're making it sound like there's a lot of rational people out there that are saying, geez, I would have did really well going to university to get a STEM degree, but I understood that paying back that loan would be a burden. So instead, I'm just going to go directly into the labor market. I don't think that a lot of that's occurring. I think that almost anyone who has any sort of inkling to go to school, our culture has said, great, there's tons of grants, which we're not talking about, but there's also tons of ways for you to get student loans that are guaranteed by the government. So go ahead and go. So I don't see this glut of people. In fact, I think you could see this, that we're getting more and more. I think we have too many people in university. I think's the problem. I think people are going that have no business going. That they're going because they want to have a party life, or they're going because, well, I was always told that you got to go to college. And so I think this is the wrong way to look at it. Now, I know you're talking about trade schools as well, which I applaud, because I think that we do need more incentive for people to go to trade schools. But again, also we have to look, we already saw the answer. At one point in this country, we had the answer, which was get the government out of this. When the government wasn't involved, it cost about $1,000 a semester on average to go to university. Pretty much anyone could afford that if they decided to pick up a second job. Yeah, picking up a second job sucks, but that's better than putting it on the dole of the taxpayer. Because again, what you can't get around is the people that for whatever reason will, even if it's free, choose not to go to college. They're the ones that will disproportionately be paying the brunt of this.
So I would like to clear up a couple of things, though. So there are some specific expenses that I do not think should be included in this. So the only thing that I'm talking about is just the tuition and just the books. College dorms, not covered. That should be at the student's or the family's expense. I'm just advocating for the tuition and the books. Any other expenses, that's student responsibility.
Well,
getting
let me
drunk
ask-
and getting shit-faced,
Okay,
like you were
hang on,
talking
Rob. Let him
about,
finish. Let him finish.
that should not be covered. Any excess funds that would, like if the government accidentally overpays the college, that should just go back to the government. That should not go to the student to spend as they see fit. Now, in addition to that, something else that you commented on that I haven't had a chance to there's something else that you said that I haven't had a chance to comment on. College degrees wouldn't lose value if there are enough jobs to fill. And since there's going to likely be a shortage over the next 5 years, let's say, then this would help open up those doors. Now, you're right in the fact that you can't just go to college and get the loans. But the roadblock is after they graduate and they're saddled with a $500 a month student loan payment. That sucks. And that prevents their economic growth. And also by not having the student loans, they're either putting their money in the bank to save it, hopefully for a house, right? Because buying houses helps the economy. Spending money, they would have more money to spend, which goes into the economy. Paying off student loans, that doesn't really do that. And one last thing. Now, you mentioned how much cheaper it was in the 70s, and then the government got involved. Now, if we kicked the government out of the higher education system entirely right now, you would not see the costs of state-funded universities and trade schools drop because they have all these people all the employees that have to make what they're making to be able to afford to pay their bills and live their life. So I don't think you would see a decrease in how much it costs to go to a state college.
Sure you would, if people stop going. So what we're seeing now is, so there's 3 points you made there. I'll address the last one first.
Mm-hmm.
What you see with people, COVID, one of the silver linings to it, or depends on how you look at it, a lot of people are realizing that they could do a lot of things at home online, including education. So, for example, I graduated from Clarion University. The writing was on the wall way back in 2005, 2006 with Clarion University. I'll tell you a story that you won't care about. In our state, they voted, whatever the chancellors or whatever voted in our state, to allow universities like Penn State that had branch campuses to give degrees that just said Penn State. Right? That's what the state university system did. And what that did was effectively the beginning of the end that signaled for a school like Slippery Rock or for a school like Clarion University. Because if you could go to, you've probably never heard of this town, but if you could go to a town like Du Bois, which is roughly the same population size as a town like Clarion, and you can get a degree from Du Bois that says Penn State University, or you can get a degree from Clarion that says Clarion University, which one are you going to go to? Well, you would go get the Penn State degree. And so what happened is we see that places like Clarion, through that and various other reasons, tuition has been decreasing, which caused them to increase the cost of their tuition, which caused tuition to decrease even more. Now, Clarion has partnered with 3 other state schools, and I believe its name is now Pennsylvania West. So we have 3 other state schools. So you can see that the demand for schools like Clarion to have a physical campus is actually decreasing as we speak. I think that if you got the government out of these sorts of loans and things like that, it might take a while, but what you would see after a generation or so is that universities would be forced to offer cheaper products, and they would take away a lot of the things that cost a lot of money, such as living on campus, activity fees, and things like that, because you'd be able to stay at home. Which gets to the first point you made, which was that they would only pay tuition and books. Well, that's a small percentage of what people pay when they go to university. So your argument that that we need to make sure that poor people could go to university, they're still going to have blocks. How are they going to afford rent? How are they going to be able to afford activity fees? How are they going to be able to afford the technology that's necessary, such as computers and stuff that most modern universities require is necessary? And so still, you would see people disadvantaged that were poor. There's a lot of costs that go to university that are outside the scope of just tuition and books. The last thing you said was that there would be more money if these people didn't have to pay off. But again, evidence shows that these people have the money to pay off those loans because they're investing in a product, right? Consider this. The same argument that you just made there would be an argument for forgiving people's mortgages. Well, you took out a mortgage. Instead of paying off your mortgage, if the government paid it off for you, then you'd be able to spend your money on a new car or a vacation, or you'd be able to go out to eat more, or you'd be able to create a business which would create jobs and things like that. This is an ad reductive argument that you could make about the government paying off anything, and it's not true.
Yeah,
it doesn't work that way. It looks good on paper, but it doesn't work that way. But even if we accept that that's what would happen, why would we want to give money to people that over the course of their life, evidence shows, on average, are going to be more likely to pay that money back than people such as those that get mortgages out because they want to have kids and start a family and they never went to university? If I had to pick which of those groups to give free money, which I don't want to give free money to either of them, but if I had to pick which ones to say your debt is forgiven, I would pick the people raising the family that didn't go to the indoctrination chamber, that cost a ridiculous amount of money, that ended up partying all the time and things like that. I'd go with the family. So I still don't see a convincing cut. Like, at some point we have to say, we can't just say, oh, if the government pays all this stuff back for people, they'll have more money in their pocket. And I'll just ask, would you support tax cuts then? Is that something you support? Because isn't that the rationale behind that?
I do support tax cuts on the middle class and the poor, and increasing taxes to the rich, right? To make sure that, sorry, crap on my phone.
No,
I don't know how you would tax the rich, though. Like, they tend to get away with it. The IRS doesn't audit the rich. The IRS audits the middle class and the poor far more. And that's due to funding for the IRS being cut year after year. So I think funding for the IRS should be increased so that way they have the resources necessary to audit the people that should be audited, which is the rich. They get away with tax evasion far more than the middle class and the poor. We're not, like, even if we get audited, we're not trying to get away with millions of dollars in tax evasion. That's pretty much the rich doing that. But they don't ever get audited, really, comparatively speaking, because they can afford to hire a high-class, expensive attorney and basically drag the IRS through the mud in the process. Like, it's just, it doesn't work.
Okay, but
so I'm in favor of of IRS funding being increased for that reason.
Hang on, Rob. You made a lot of points. You got to let him address them, okay?
Okay.
Could you restate your points on the colleges, though? I apologize.
I basically, the other point I was making, that only covering tuition and books would still be a stumbling block to poor people. If your goal is to allow, say, well, there's a blockage to right now people, which I said I don't agree with,
right?
Because poor people are getting these loans.
So the lab fees, technology fees, I would think that those would be included in the tuition.
Well, there's a lot
That's
of
how
other.
I
There's cost of
imagine it.
living to be on campus. There's like if you look at an average state university, you would be amazed at how much of your bill activities fees. I think I paid $2,000 a year for activities fees. There's all sorts of money that goes into, and presumably what you're doing is taking away the ability to get a loan, right? Because you're saying the loans are bad, paying the high interest rates are bad. So now these people, okay, now my tuition's paid for, but to get the rest of this stuff, I'm going to have to pay for it somehow, and the cost of it's going to be exorbitantly high anyways.
So one thing with the cost of the tuition, and in your hypothesis that the tuition rates would drop if the government was not involved, is part of the legislation could be to kind of like how health insurance companies negotiate with medical providers on their costs. The government could be given the power to negotiate the tuition costs down to a much more reasonable level, thereby saving taxpayers even more money on this proposal.
So what I wanted to say about the IRS situation is, first off, increasing funding for the IRS will have the exact inverse. What they'll do is they'll go after poor and middle class people more, and that's evident. That's what they're doing.
Not if they're directed to go after the rich.
But again, the problem is, right, and this is always a problem that people that want the state to act more, they always assume that if we give the state more power, that it'll be the virtuous operating the levers of that power in the state. When in fact, it's almost always the opposite. It's almost every time we give the state the power to do something, it ends up being the last people we want that are operating. For example, right now, there is no official mandate, would you admit, for the IRS to allow wealthy people to get away with avoiding taxes. There's no mandate to allow that, correct?
No, they just go after low-hanging fruit, which is us.
Okay, so why would it be that if we have more IRS, that all of a sudden they'd say, you know what, we're going to change. Now, instead of going after even more low-hanging fruit, which is the poor and working class, now all of a sudden we're going to bust our butt to go after these wealthy people that are doing tax evasion. That's not what's going to happen. And the reason is many of those wealthy people...
has to do with whatever the direction from the administration is. So
but you just admitted that there's no mandate right now for the administration to allow the rich people off.
Right. So if the administration changes direction on that, which they can, the IRS is part of the executive branch, then I don't see why they can't go after the rich. I mean, the net positive for the IRS and the federal government is huge, because you're talking about people getting away with millions of dollars in tax evasion compared to a poor person getting away with $200 or whatever the average middle class or poor person tries to get away with anyways, which I don't even necessarily think that someone like me is actually trying to evade taxes. I go online to TurboTax and I file my tax return.
Me too.
I get back whatever it tells me I'm going to get back. Like, I'm not intentionally hiding anything, so it's kind of silly for the IRS to go after somebody like me. So,
but the problem is that's the status quo.
Low-hanging fruit become the rich people. Yes, it costs them more time and effort in court to go after the rich people, but the light at the end of that tunnel is the millions of dollars that they're getting from them in tax evasion.
Okay,
let me just ask you a good example.
Let me just ask you point blank. Do you think that right now, regardless of the funding situation, whatever the IRS is being funded to the tune of right now, that they would be better served going after the wealthy instead of going after the poor and working class, because that light at the end of the tunnel of them getting these potential millions?
Yeah, I do. I do think it would be better.
Okay, so that disproves your assertion. If that currently, the status quo, your argument is right now, the IRS, if they would go after the rich instead of the poor, based on whatever limited resources they have now, they would stand to make much more money for the government. But for whatever reason, they're not doing it. But if we hired more IRS agents, all of a sudden they would change the tune. Why? The same profit incentive would still be there. So again, what would happen would be they would say it's tough to go after these people. By the way, many of these people are the political donors to the executive agency that hired me, just like we saw with...
The argument that I've read is online is that they don't actually have the resources to go after the rich people in general because of the lack of funding.
That's not true. That doesn't even make sense.
Okay, well, I'm not
Let me
really
explain
sure
to you.
what the...
Let me explain to you.
I don't know a whole lot about the IRS. I didn't research the IRS for this debate. So.
Yeah, but let me just explain why I know that's not true. Let's say that for the sake of argument, I don't know this to be the case. Let's say we have 10,000 IRS agents. That could be grossly underestimated. I don't know. But let's say we have those. Now, let's say to go after someone like me or you, it would require one IRS agent, right? But to go after someone like a celebrity, it would require 50 IRS agents. But the cost-benefit analysis, you say, and I probably agree with you, 50 chumps like me and you, them squeezing an extra $100, $200 out of, right, would still not be worth as much as that one whale, that one person that you could get $1 million out of that evaded to $1 million. You would agree with that, right?
Absolutely. And I think what they're looking at is the number of successful, from their perspective, audits versus the amount of money they would get from the audits. So I think it has to do with a change in perspective. And I don't know what happens behind closed doors. I don't know if rich people are paying somebody off or if there's lobbyists involved. Like these are things that I'm not aware of. And I don't even know how I would become aware of those situations in the first place.
We don't get too bogged down on this, right? And Rob, I'll let you finish your point in a second. But I think we can agree that it's probably not the most sensible thing to say, hey, the IRS is not going to divert its resources towards going after rich fat cats if they think it's going to make them a lot of money. It would make more sense to do that than go after the middle class. I don't think we need to necessarily beat that over the head and talk about, what's going on behind closed doors and things like that. Maybe we can move specifically back into the why you want the taxes to be the way that they are for the purposes of the student loans and debts and things like this, rather than get too caught up on kind of this micro issue on how the IRS works.
But I'll just finish my point real quick. So even if we only had 50 IRS agents, right, they should go after one of the big cats instead of 50 of the little ones. So to say, well, the reason they're not going after the big fish right now, it might be true they don't have enough agents to go after all the big fish, but they're not even attempting. They spend more of their time going after conservatives like Lois Lerner and things like that. The reason this is important is because I think that it illustrates sort of the fundamental disagreement that we're having of our faith in these government and executive systems, where you're assuming that someone like you would be in charge, and you say, well, I'd make sure that the money was only going to STEM fields, and I'd make sure that rich people weren't grifting off it, and I'd make sure that poor people were getting all the opportunities that these rich people. That's not how it will be implemented. What will happen is this will end up being a massive loan forgiveness to people that traditionally make more, and it will end up going to programs that end up then charging more and charge more tax dollars, just like the last time the government got involved in the 70s, and the cost of tuition went up exponentially higher than the cost of inflation.
So do you think if the government had been given the power to negotiate back in the 70s, that would have helped stave off a lot of the price increases?
No, because price controls from the government almost always fail as well. The best alternative would have been the government not getting involved in the first place. The more you say, this constantly is what happens. We're like, okay, we'll have the government get involved. Now, I'm not saying there's not a role for limited government programs. There certainly is. But oftentimes what we see is they're like, well, we're going to have the government get involved in this. And then you go, but here's a significant problem. Now the government's involved in student loans. Now the cost of tuition went up. So you say, okay, we'll have the government institute price controls. But then the problem with that is you'll see a bunch of universities and stuff go to other countries. You'll see a bunch of universities fail that aren't able to make it profitable compared to the private universities, which will result in less college education for people that want it. And then you would say, then we'll have the government step in and fix that problem. And there's this never-ending ball of unintended consequences that require more and more government power, which ends up making the situation massively worse. In my opinion. I mean, I think if I would have asked you in the 70s, you would have probably said, absolutely, and many people would have said, absolutely. Why not allow the government to guarantee these loans? Because what happens is, this means poor people will have more of an opportunity to go. This was at a time where it cost, to go to a community school or a state school like you're suggesting, $1,000 a semester. And people were like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Now we've priced out poor people, unless they get these ridiculous loans that they end up... So for me, the answer is not to forgive these loans and things like that. I think... And the other thing is, I don't see the limit, the upper limit. So let me just ask you point blank. it seems to be you're basically saying more education is good as long as it's in STEM fields. Would you say then we should approach that state schools giving master's degrees and doctorates as well? That should be free education because that keeps the United States on the cutting edge?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that, but I do have a couple of caveats.
Sure.
So one, I think that there should be income restrictions. I think that's reasonable. I think that the rich should be priced out, and the poor and the middle class should be motivated to go for STEM fields. So, like, I would be fine with I have a bunch of compromise ideas that I came up with today. For example, there shouldn't be student debt relief for the for-profit colleges, and there's also trade schools that are for-profit as well. I don't think that debt relief and taxpayer funded without student loans should be for the for-profit colleges and the for-profit trade schools because of the additional costs that you're talking about. I think keeping it that's a way to help keep the cost down. Right now, those colleges and trade schools are being funded. Yes, it's hypothesized that the student will pay it back, but when you're talking about loans, like a loan total that is 4 to 5 times what it would be at a state school or a trade school that's funded by the state, then you figure that's significantly more difficult to pay off. So that's a potential compromise, and definitely the Ivy League thing, all the Ivy League universities should be excluded.
So if you don't mind, can I just take that one? Go ahead, please.
Yep. No. I don't want to cut you off. No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask something on that. Like, you keep saying for profit, but I don't know that what you're saying there is not entirely disagreeable to me. Like, why should the government be funding these Ivy League schools? I just say, well, why should they be funding even the state level? The distinction you keep making is for profit. But you understand that nonprofits, whether it be universities or whether it be companies, oftentimes basically act as profits. For example, the Clinton Foundation is a nonprofit. What ends up happening is the people that work at that nonprofit end up paying themselves exorbitant sums so that their balance sheet equals zero at the end of the day. So, for example, Clarendon University, where I went, the administration at that went up something like 10 times since the 70s, the amount of the educators. So we saw more and more administrators. So it's a nonprofit state school, and yet it's spending more and more money on people that are doing less and less for the students. Chancellors are now making hundreds of thousands of dollars, deans are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, etc. So the idea that somehow just saying, well, if the school's nonprofit, then that ensures that this money won't be misallocated. I know you haven't directly said that, but I get that you're saying that the distinction you're drawing is profit versus not-for-profit or non-profit, and I don't think it's as simple as you're making it seem there.
So you think there should be some sort of oversight, even not even considering this whole hypothesis that I have, you think there should be some kind of oversight on those administrative officials?
Well, I don't know how you do it. How does the state do it? I think this is why I'm for getting the state money out of most of these things. I absolutely think there should be oversight. Before my tax dollars go to anything, or the average person's tax dollars, there should be some controls in there to make sure that people are getting the bang for their buck. I don't think that we're anywhere near close having any administration, particularly the Biden administration, but even a Republican administration, be able to effectively do that. That's why I say that if there are things, for example, I'd give you the easiest price control. If your university is harassing people based on their political ideology and not providing safety for people based on their political ideology, I do not think they should get tax money. So if Milo Yiannopoulos wants to come to Berkeley and a bunch of people get the shit beat out of them while the university stands down and allows it to happen, Berkeley should no longer get any federal funding whatsoever, period. What's that girl, the gun girl, that goes to university? She's always getting the shit beat out of her by people. Same story with her, right? So those are easy controls that I would, but I don't know how the state comes in and says, we're going to have a limit on the amount of administrators. I mean, the problem is when the state gives money, people are going to find ways to spend that money as an excuse to get more state money. And you know this, my university.
I think the negotiation aspect of that is really important.
But who's going to negotiate?
Now, I'm sorry?
Who does the negotiating?
You mean on the government side?
Well, right. So now that you're basically saying that the government's now going to come in with a fine tooth comb and say you have to spend the money on this, 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 and this, and there will be a negotiation like the government will price fix. They'll say you can't charge more than X for this tuition, or you can't charge more than X for these books. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, and I think the Department of Education could be repurposed to accomplish that.
I just don't think it's feasible. I think that when we give the government this power, that they won't apply it judiciously, and I think that you could see it with the Title IX stuff. Like in secondary, again, Title IX, if you looked at it, I don't know how much you know about this, but it is clear that the spirit of Title IX was simply to say, we need to provide athletic opportunities to women. It's clear that's what it was. The Obama administration basically sent out this letter that became famous that said, listen, if someone's accused of sexual assault at your university and you don't take that claim seriously, you will not receive your federal funding. This led to universities, anytime there was an accusation levied, just saying, yep, that person's booted out. No trial, no due process, just, yep, get rid of them. Because they were afraid under Title IX they would lose their federal money. I think that if you have the government give them even more control to go into these schools and to say, well, they're going to have price controls and they're going to ensure, that this, and this. It might work when you're in charge. It might work when I'm in charge. But what happens when the next person that I don't like gets an administration in there? Again, never forget, Lois Lerner at the IRS, we know, specifically targeted conservative groups. They did that. And so until we fix that corruption, and this corruption in the rot runs deep, not just in the political system and the government system, but also in the university system, I'm afraid that the more you give the government power over this sort of stuff and control of our education system, the more corrupt it'll become.
See, I think problems like that, I don't like the idea of indoctrination happening at schools. So I think there should be a significant effort to eliminate that. I think that schools should be more focused on more objective studies. And I understand that there are ways that you could teach, like mathematics, for example, that could be considered indoctrination. However, if you remove the problems, then you're left with solutions, basically. So now, I don't know like the specific ins and outs of how all this would work. Like these are very general ideas that I have, right?
Yeah, it's not a bad discussion. Look, this is vastly different than what I expected. I didn't know you. I thought you'd probably approach this through a Bernie Sanders lens, right? More of a socialist lens. I don't think you're doing that exactly. It's a nuanced discussion that I don't mind. But I just think that me and you, if we had a long, 5-hour discussion about our beliefs, you would end up having a lot more faith in government institutions than I do. I think that it's been proven over and over that those institutions are easily corruptible or incompetent. And I think you would think if we just give the government the power to do these things, they would operate in an intelligent, benevolent way. And I think history proves me out to be right, that's not the case. That doesn't make you an immoral or a dumb person. I think that you're identifying real problems and you're coming up with solutions. I just don't think it will play out in this sort of benevolent way that you think it would.
Well, I think that for all the problems that you listed, there are solutions via bipartisan legislation. The problem that we see in Congress, even especially now, is everything is split down the middle. And it just seems like neither side wants to reach across the aisle and come up with solutions that they can work towards. While I am left-leaning, I like to think that I'm not the typical leftist, in that I want the right and the left to compromise on a lot of things, on everything if possible, and coming up with solutions for trying to keep the United States at as the number one leader in science and technology. I think that's critically important, especially in terms of space exploration, medical science, advancing human lives, providing a foundation for future college graduates, making things happen.
Just to cut in briefly, you say I'm not the typical leftist. Isn't that like when the woman says I'm not the typical woman? And just by her saying that, you know that she's the typical woman, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Just by them saying that, like I'm not like other girls, you're like every other girl who ever existed, right? Just,
Yeah.
it's just an
probably.
observation, right?
Yep.
So just to bring this back, let's try to thread the needle in the last 10 minutes here as we wind this down before we get to the Q&A. And there's a lot of Q&A. That's why we're probably going to button this up a little bit early to get to all of it because, well, people like you just as much as I thought they would, Garrett. No, I'm kidding. They're all good questions.
Thought he was likable. Yeah.
Yeah, likable guy. Just to kind of thread this back in. I know we kind of have moved the topic around. I do think that Rob tied it in fairly well. His overarching kind of argument here is like, look, even if we did these things that you wanted, it's not going to play out like you think. And you're like, hey, man, that's probably a fair point because I don't even know how all the specifics on this would work. So if we're going to come to this kind of compromise, as you say, Garrett, right? What is the compromise you think you and Rob could agree on?
So I think what Rob would be most interested in is minimizing the costs to the taxpayers wherever possible. And if I'm wrong on that, Rob, I do want you to correct me on that.
No, I agree with that. I think that is my primary concern, right? So what you're saying is
right
different.
Now, the costs for to the taxpayers is humongous, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'm for limiting that.
What 25% of student loan borrowers are in default? Like that's a humongous cost to the taxpayer. And yes, I acknowledge that forgiving that debt does not help the taxpayers in any way. But that's why the solutions are more future-minded. So I have an example. So there's a college dropout rate. Let's say a college student drops out before graduation. Well, now they're accountable for the tuition and book costs or whatever it is the taxpayers funded for that. That now becomes a student loan.
Okay, but I think
okay,
that's difficult, right? Because think of the situation you've set up then, right? Now you've told people, right? This is not an argument that lefties are going to want to hear. Universities were designed to be elitist. They were designed to be prejudiced. Prejudice based on ability. That's what you would want, right? It's not for the ideal university system wouldn't be that every single person that comes out of high school goes to university. It would be that the top percentage of people go to a university. And so if we say, well, we want to make this available to everyone, but if you go and fail, now you're on the hook for this money that otherwise the government would have paid. That to me is going to be disastrous for a lot of people that maybe are now goaded into going to university that maybe don't have the intelligence to be able to be there to pass that. And so now all of a sudden they're in this terrible position a year in where they go, I can't do it. I can't complete this coursework. I've made the wrong decision, but I can't leave because if I leave now I'm on the hook for all this money. And what will end up happening then is what happens in universities now. They'll dumb it down. They'll just start giving everyone A's and B's, which devalues the education and devalues the actual degree in the first place.
See, I was thinking that you would like that compromise, but I concede that point. That's completely fine. I don't have a problem admitting when I'm wrong.
Let me ask you this: maybe this is somewhere we can kind of go. Let's take higher ed out of it for a second. I think that the real danger that we see of America lagging behind educationally happens in K through 12. So would you be for sort of conservative principles of people homeschooling and people being able to use the tax money that would go to education system to have school choice to go where they want? Would you be for those sorts of things?
As long as funding for public schools is not decreased in the process, and actually it should be increased.
But it's going to necessarily decrease because, for example, if I have a kid and the school says, if you send them to the local state school, we'll pay $12,000 basically per student that goes to that state school. But instead I could take that $12,000 and go to a private school. That would be $12,000 less for that state school.
Right. I'm not talking about the total funding being increased or what I've seen happen, and correct me if I'm wrong, the public school funding dropped to provide funding for school choice and private schools and stuff like that. But what I'm talking about is the funding per child should increase. So that way, if you decide to send your kid to a public school, then that child is having all the funding necessary to educate them. If you decide to send your kid to some other school or homeschool, you have the funding necessary to educate your kid. That's what I'm talking about.
So I get it, but I think that this too, it's one of those things that it's our gut reaction. Like, you hear this all the time when we talk about what's the problem with inner city schools. Most people don't know this, but actually more federal monies, more money is spent per student in inner city schools than outside of inner city schools when it comes to public schools.
You just did actually.
Did I do it?
What was I, Rob?
What was I supposed to say? The Fuentes thing that he says to Destiny. What was I supposed to say?
You.
Hey,
Are we
you!
supposed to do shots? If he says the word actually, like,
it's like Pee Wee's Playhouse.
That was like Low End Theory saying, like, at the end of the day, now everyone take a shot.
Actually,
I do use filler word. It's something I should know better. I do use filler word. Disaster. I say that a lot too. I'm trying to get better. Always growing. But to me, let's say we identify the problem of, we're worried that education as a whole is being devalued in this country. Maybe it's because it costs too much, whatever the reason is. I say if we isolate that as an important problem, which I agree with, but we could nip in the bud. We don't even have to get to the finance aspect of it. Right? It's easy to say throw more money at the problem. We throw more money, and K through 12, we're throwing more money every year, and the quality of the education is going down. Join me in fighting the indoctrination that comes from these schools for all of these garbage left-wing causes, that we're more interested in teaching social emotional learning. We're more interested in teaching things like critical race theory and things like that, instead of math, reading, and things like that. Let's start there, and then all of a sudden, our children will be much smarter in the next generation. They'll do much better in higher ed. The people that are graduating from these K through 12 schools will then go on to be professors and things like that won't be indoctrinated. And we'll end up having a generational solution that, yes, we could then discuss problems with tuition and things like that. But that would do so much more to ensure that the United States is getting the best and the brightest, more than tinkering with how we pay for this already corrupt and incompetent service that people are getting.
So I didn't prepare for a debate on corruption. I know that's kind of your thing. I prepared for a debate on student loan debt. So,
well, that's fair. That's fair. But I'm just saying, oftentimes when we see a problem, we could approach it from many different solutions. So,
absolutely.
Wait, no, hang on. I'm sorry. I can't let you walk with that, Garrett, because one of the premises that you've kind of said over and over again is that you kind of think that this is corrupt. Right, you got to think that the way the current student loan setup is corrupt, right?
I haven't said it was corrupt. That was Rob, wasn't it? Or
well, you said.
No, well, I mean, you may not have used the exact word, but that was the thematics, right? Is that it's corrupt? It's backwards.
I think that there are specific instances of corruption in the education system, but I wouldn't say that I'm exactly knowledgeable about what those are.
I see.
I was mainly looking at, so when I was researching this, I was looking at how many STEM graduates we have per year in the United States compared to other countries, how much student loan debt there is, how much per student, like stuff like that. I wasn't looking at a corruption angle.
Gotcha. No, I understand. I'm just saying, from the perspective and the flow of this debate, it seems that both of you are IDing corruption just in a different way. So this is, I guess, this is my overarching point with this. We're going to move into closing statements, gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed having this kind of spirited conversation, even more than a debate. And I did kind of expect it to go that way. That's why I wanted to do the community debates and start introducing these guys into the debatosphere, right? Garrett, we're gonna start with you. You can move into your closing statement first. You have 5 minutes uninterrupted. You can address whatever you want to. We have a pretty hefty Q&A we got to get to. So go ahead, man.
So because of the Q&A, I am kind of interested in keeping it short. So Rob, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. I really appreciate it. I enjoy watching you debate. I disagree with you on quite a few things, but that doesn't mean I'm not entertained by your debates.
Are you not entertained?
That's what I was saying.
And so I love the Crucible. I love the neutral debate platforms in general. I started watching MDD last year, and I've been addicted to watching debates ever since. So I watch them more than I watch regular TV now. It's a lot of fun for me. But to wrap all this up, I think that there is a lot of possibility in making state colleges and trade schools taxpayer funded without student loans. While I'll freely admit that there are some potential problems with my ideas, I also think that there's a lot of positive aspects of what I'm proposing that could be at least looked into and explored. And I don't see anything wrong with exploring the ideas that I've had or that I've brought up in this debate. And I haven't seen anyone else, at least in like the debatosphere, as you called it, come at it this way in the manner that I have. That doesn't mean it's a good or that doesn't mean I approach it in a good or a bad way. I just wanted to give it my best effort. And I conclude.
Okay. Appreciate that closing statement. Nora, you're up. You've got 5 minutes. I know you're going to take it all, but go ahead.
Maybe not. I will just say,
I don't ever give Nora nearly as much shit as he probably deserves. I'm going to give him a little bit. Go ahead, man.
I deserve a lot. I fully agree. No, this was a very interesting conversation. I thought, so many times when you argue with people, particularly on the left, I have a bias. It's in a position of not being in reality. Last night, I talked to someone that said, open borders, total open borders. There's no upper limit to how many people there could be in the United States. 5 billion? Fine. More people is always good. Those sorts of conversation I find boring because it's like you're dealing with someone who's not dealing with reality. You were the complete opposite of that. You were willing to listen to the problems I brought up and address them and say, I can understand that, but I still favor this position. I thought it was an absolute worthwhile conversation. To sum up exactly what we were talking about, I think that the government getting more involved with this stuff will still end up benefiting people that generally are more well-to-do than those that aren't, and will end up being implemented in a corrupt way or an incompetent way, as we see almost every time the government gets involved with this. I think they're right to be worried about our education system now, but I think that kind of dealing with what our education system is a better place to start than how much that it's costing and forgiving debt and things like that. You say you're not really interested in the corruption part of this debate. Well, that's fine. It'd be like if we're saying, people can't afford safe cars right now, and so you're saying, I think the government should help them pay for the car. And I'm saying, yeah, but all the cars are shit. None of them are safe. So we have to make safe cars before the government starts to pay for people. That's exactly what I'm saying about our higher education system, that it's kind of poisonous right now, and so we should start from that angle. But I do like a lot of the ideas the way you're thinking. I do like the ideas of getting the state out of funding Ivy League schools. I do like the ideas of prioritizing STEM and trade fields and things like that, and kind of not giving federal monies and tax dollar monies to sort of these universities that are teaching all of these things that have nothing to do with making productive citizens that could help benefit society. So I agree with all those parts of it. I just think that there are a lot of potential problems with having the states sort of kind of completely fund this. I think that unfortunately, something I said earlier that we didn't really get into much, that this will just make a 4-year degree the equivalent of a high school diploma now, because everyone will be expected to go and get that degree, and if you don't, then you'll be on the downslope just like you would if you don't have a high school diploma now. So I think that if we're really interested in making better engineers, better scientists, better mathematicians, that we need to start in K through 12. We could do a lot more growing in those places if we focused on those sorts of things in K through 12 education, instead of all of this fluff that we have with all of this social emotional learning and CRT and all of these other garbage topics that aren't really getting to what our university should be doing. You want to teach your kids that stuff? By all means, go to a private school, teach them yourself. But I want my schools not to be teaching my beliefs, not to be teaching my religion. I want them to teach math. I want them to teach reading. That's the stuff that I want to see, and I think that we should all be able to agree on that. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting debate, and it's topics worth looking into. I mean, right out of the gate, the very first thing you said was sort of, these fraudulent schools. I never even thought of that. It never even crossed my mind. So it's clear that you're thinking of this in a critical way, and I like the direction this went. Even if I don't agree with all your solutions, these sorts of discussions are what get us to a better place, because we could, both of us, I think, didn't foresee all of the potential issues with the things we were saying. And so to talk to someone, I think it helps you buttress your opinion and think of these things. So I had a lot of fun. I thought it was a really good discussion.
You know what you fuckers did to me? You know what these guys did? Okay, so the mods, bastards, they go in to the chat, they make a poll. I think Pedro made it, right? So now everyone I bring on, I have to say, hey, you, for the next 3 streams in a row, and that got voted in by 90%. 90% bring on. Unreal. Okay, we got to get to the Q&A, right? Got to get to the Q&A. So, Garet, thanks a bunch for coming on. It was an interesting debate. I enjoyed it. And now I'm going to rip both of you to pieces on this. So, Garet, you said at the 22-minute mark, he says he sees colleges as just another faucet of public school, right? But Garet, public schools suck. You know that, right?
So we fix the public schools too. Like Rob said, remove the indoctrination and focus on STEM.
Yeah, but have you ever noticed that this is what people do, right? They go, see, this thing that I want, it only sucks right now because I don't have these other 3 things in place that I would need to get in place before I got this thing in place, right? This is this is how people's minds always operate, and I'm always thinking, well, let's go to the first thing and fix that shit.
You're an engineer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think, like how long did it take you to become an engineer? And
a competent engineer, or
do you think you would have been better served?
It took me about 9 years to get good.
Do you think you would have been better served by having a focus on engineering going through K through 12?
No.
Okay.
No. I think for basic education, I think
until
at least,
laying the foundation.
Yeah, I think up until maybe 7th, 8th grade, probably, where you get most of your foundations from.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember much of high school, right? But I remember a lot of trying to have sex and doing all kinds of other shit that had nothing to do with school at all. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't too focused on academia. I was focused on the incredible amount of hot women in California that were walking around. But that's just me. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of people were in the same boat, though, don't you?
Probably. I was like the normal nerd playing Magic during my lunch hour. So.
Okay, well, you obviously weren't chasing women if you were playing Magic, but for the rest
I was with you, Garet.
For the rest of us, Garet, we were chasing skirt. I'm kidding. Joke.
Let me ask you that. Do you mind if I ask you something, Andrew?
What did Rob say?
Okay. I said I was with you playing Magic. Trust me. But let me ask you this, Andrew. Would you have learned more if instead of going to university, you would have apprenticed with other engineers?
That's what I did.
Yeah. And I think that that's something we didn't talk about much, but oftentimes what happens is, even in the trade schools, it's something people don't talk. We had Votech in my high school. So you had a bunch of people that during high school, they went through regular high school half the day, and then they went to diesel tech and just learned diesel tech. And I think that set a foundation. But if they had to choose, do I go straight to work for a garage with some dude that's going to take the time while I'm getting a paycheck to say, this is how it's done, we're going to show you in the real world how it's done? Or do I go to a 2-year tech school? I think many would tell you I would have learned more one-on-one at the garage, getting hands-on training, than going to the tech school. So I think, unfortunately, one of the things that happens if we make all those things free is people end up going, well, go that route and end up learning less than if they'd have went the route Andrew went with mentor Papa Fascist, whoever was mentoring.
Emperor of Cats got you on that one, man. Blue counter spells only. Rob, at the 25-minute mark, you said going to college is a choice. My problem with kind of this thought process on this of, college is a choice, just don't go, right? Just don't go. You don't want it, just don't go. But, to be perfectly honest with this, and I think both of you guys would agree, like, we were beat over the fucking head with the college stick, right? They're like, look, you got to go. You're never going to be anything if you don't go. You're never going to get a good job if you don't go. You ain't going to be shit. You're going to be a janitor. You're going to be scrubbing. You know what I mean? You remember all the propaganda. And it's like, Rob, propaganda affects choice, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. But it doesn't mean that we don't suffer the consequences of that choice, even if it came through propaganda. What it does is acknowledge what we could do to solve this going forward. So one of the first things, I tell this to young people all the time. I have a sister that's 20 years younger than me. I tell people, don't go to college unless you absolutely have to for your degree. Don't make the mistake I did, where I didn't know what I wanted to be when I graduated at 17, and everyone was like, hey, you're kind of smart, you have to go to college. Period. There was no choice for me because it was like our entire culture, my entire family. I was the first one in my family to go to college. It was just a given. If you're smart enough, you go to college. So the way we fix that is to say, no, culturally, we shouldn't be telling people that. Go to college if there's a specific reason to go. Otherwise, take that money you were going to piss away to just go party at frats and stuff. Take that $20,000, have a nice big kegger for 3 months, and get to work. You know, do something that's productive, something that's not going to put you in this massive amounts of debt. But, you know, I don't think just because culture there's a lot of other things culture pushes us into. And we don't say, oh, well, now we need the government to come out and bail me out. You know, I smoke weed because all the movies I watched told me smoking weed was cool. Now, you know, I've lost a lot of opportunities because I was high all the time. The government should come in and say the culture fucked you up. It's still my choice at the end of the day.
But it's not the culture that fucked it. It wasn't culture telling people to go to college. It was the fucking schools themselves and the government telling you to do it, right?
And the parents as a result of that.
Yeah, so I mean, the propaganda was literally from the top down. It wasn't like, you know, there was some dope smoking movie that came out or some shit, like How High, I don't know, whatever. And people were like, you know, firing it up. Seemed like it was good. The culture indoctrinated me. Like, I think you would have a good leg to stand on there. I think it's a harder leg to stand on. Like, the government itself directed the entire educational system for 20 years to get kids into college, or else tell them that they were going to fail at everything in life.
Okay, you know, but then let's say this: the government shoved the food pyramid down our throat that told us that grains were the most important thing. Right. So what should happen? So should the government now give tens of thousands of dollars to everyone that has an obesity problem that came from our generation? I don't think so. I think it's shit, and we should correct what the government was doing. But at the end of the day, the government didn't force you to do shit, just like they didn't force you to go to college. They may have had that indoctrination, but
that's fair. I think that's a fair point back, but I would just have to kind of counter with this, which is the government has had to pay out tens of thousands of dollars in, well, tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in liability fees for that food pyramid and for pushing these types of things onto people. They were held liable to at least a degree, probably not the degree they should have been, but there was something back their way. You know what I mean? There was some kind of backlash going the other direction. It's like, not on this, though. On this, it's like, you know, they told you to go do it and you did it, and your reward is just kind of fuck you, right?
Well, not if you graduated. Chances are, on average, you're making $14,000 a year more than the person that didn't graduate.
Yeah, it only takes you the rest of your life to pay back your $100,000.
I think the federal government was shooting for number one in science and technology, and all that propaganda led to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Rob's point's fair, and I think that Jay Freak kind of hit it on the head here. He's like, you know, that propaganda was kind of true 25 years ago. Maybe they were making a prescription they didn't think was bad, but the side effect, maybe to Rob's point that he was trying to point out to you, Garrett, which was this may not work out like you think. The unintended consequence of this was oversaturation in the market, right? For a long while. And,
probably,
and that's why a lot of those degrees, they just started like making up new degrees in bullshit and basket weaving, right? And go get a degree in basket weaving.
That's a waste of time.
Well, I mean, but you could weave baskets like no other, right?
Hey, why not?
Okay, so so to the next question from the mod here. At 32 minutes, Rob, I really got to take you to task for this because it kind of pissed me off, right? You said, I have a story you aren't going to care about, but then Rob, you fucking told the story anyway, dude. Okay? Yeah, how do you start with, I have a story you're not going to care about, and then you tell the story, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair criticism. I thought that the story, it was just the first example that came to my head to illustrate sort of the government getting involved and how it has unintended consequences. A small act as if saying, sure, branch campuses could give Penn State degrees, how that devastated in my state a bunch of campuses that are now having to come together to compete. But yeah, that is a fair criticism. Probably don't want to. What I'm about to say is bullshit, but listen to it anyways. Yeah,
listen to it anyways, right? So I wanted to point that out, right? Because we're going to clip it to make fun of you because we're jerks.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay, so shortage of STEM jobs brought up by Garet says there's not enough people. The 26-minute mark, roughly. Garet, the problem is that there's more demand for service than there are people to provide the service. Shouldn't we get those birth rates up, Garet? We got to get those birth rates up, right, Garet?
I have never objected to your birth rate argument.
Yes, we're getting somewhere, right? We'll turn them out before too long, Rob. You'll see. You will join the dark side. It'll happen.
How about you work on increasing the birth rate while opening up immigration?
Well, we can have an argument about that. You're not going to like how it goes, but we can do that argument.
I know what the argument is, and one day I want to have an immigration debate with you. I just don't have a defeater for your argument yet, but one day I will.
It will happen. So at the 36 mark, Garet, you said two of the most horrifying things that I've ever heard in my life. The first horrifying thing is that you said we should give the IRS more money so they can go after people. The second horrifying thing that you said is that we should give the IRS more money so that they could go after people. And the third, even though I said only two things, is that you said we need to give the IRS more money to go after people. I wanted to point those two things out to you, Garet.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's fair.
And you stand by that you want to give the IRS more money, Garet? Really?
Well, there's caveats, right? Like, I want more focus on the rich and less focus on the middle class and the poor. Like, that should be a mandate.
Okay. All right. You're getting shit for the rocking chair. You're giving people motion sickness, Garet. You know, do you think about anybody else at all in your life, Garet? Is it just like a Garet show? Is that what it is?
Well, everyone else that I think about is asleep, so...
Okay, Garet, how do you define the middle class as you want them and the poor to have a tax cut? I think that even Rob and I would probably tend to lean that direction. And I can agree with you that poor, as a metric we could use, maybe below the poverty line would be probably a fair metric. I know that people divide it in different ways, but that's something that we could probably all agree on is below poverty line poor. But the middle class is basically meaningless when we say that word, right? Like, what is the middle class? When people say I want to give the middle class a tax cut, there's some neighborhoods I am aware of that are not ritzy at all by anybody's metric, where $250,000 a year is poverty, man.
Yeah, I know. So I think that the middle class, this is just my opinion, but it seems to me that the middle class should be, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, like $300,000 a year. I think that's not entirely a stretch. If you're making
it's so hard, it's such a hard metric to define now. You know?
It really is. But I think somebody making like between $100,000 and $300,000 a year, I don't think they should be considered rich.
Well,
they might be well off.
Rob, what's the middle class?
I mean, I'm middle class where I live. I make, like, honest to goodness, I mean, I live in an area before I bought my house, which I bought my house for $85,000. Before I bought that house, you know what I paid for rent? For a one-bedroom place, I paid $250 a month. All of my bills I could pay for $450 a month.
Holy shit.
Now, yeah, right? That's where I live. But that situation, what I'm making now, I would be in abject poverty if I moved an hour southwest. It's crazy the way that works, you know. So it's such a fluid term. I will just say I didn't get to this argument in this point, but it was something I thought of. I do think that there is some tension between the idea of...
Okay, this comment wins it, though, Rob. Okay? This comment wins it.
Okay. Like, even your argument that, well, the rich should pay more, if the fundamental principle of, well, let's forgive loans because more money in people's pockets means they'll spend it. Rich spend money, too. right? So that
Yeah,
this is the like what people lament as trickle down economics. That we should, if you believe in that principle, then why shouldn't it be tax cuts for everyone, including the rich? Because they'll spend the money more on services for the poor, the middle class, etc., etc. So it just seems like an arbitrary distinction to say, well, people spend their money best if we give it to them, except once you reach a certain level, and then they don't. Then the government spends it better than those people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's a fair argument to make, right? If you start with the premise that most people do the right thing unless they have too much money, right? Then they just can't quite see their way to doing the right thing anymore. I've always thought that that was a difficult one to contend with. Of course, you get a lot of gobbledygook and liberal spiel out of that, right? But you
yeah,
pretty light on the answers to that question, aren't they?
yeah.
We don't want to hear about attacking landlords, for God's sakes.
Garrett, why do you want to go after the rich?
Well, it's a perception thing, right? Like it's my perception, and I don't think I'm the only one that thinks this, that they're not paying their fair share. But I think an even bigger problem than the rich is large corporations that don't pay their fair share, or that paid zero, like Amazon or Netflix paying zero in taxes during the last couple of years of Trump's administration. Now, I'm not blaming Trump for that. I don't want anyone to think that. I think that they took advantage of the tax system that's in place.
Well, and
basically
that was kind of Trump's argument to get elected, right? Was I just took advantage of the tax system that was there. Don't get mad at me, right?
Right, exactly.
Of course, they omit to tell you that the billionaire class gets together and actually writes the tax system and then hands it to politicians to go ahead and pass the tax system. But I digress. I won't get into that.
Exactly.
Garrett, if there's less rich people than other people by a significant amount, which there is, then why wouldn't the IRS just go after the rich right now?
See, that's something that I've been trying to puzzle over. Every article I've ever read about that says that it's a lack of resources, therefore they focus on the middle class and the poor. And I'm like, that's just such a stupid argument, because if you're only going to get a couple $100 out of someone like me, maybe $1,000, and that's if I didn't if I actually did cheat on my taxes by $1,000, I mean, they'd be lucky to get that. But like someone like Jeff Bezos, I mean, he probably is cheating on his taxes to the tune of millions of dollars. It just makes sense that you would go after, like, I would consider that low-hanging fruit, not the middle class and the poor. So
kind of makes you wonder if maybe certain rich people have undue influence over the political process and are able to bribe politicians using lobbying groups, and then somehow never manage to get audited, or maybe pay even 0% at the end of the year. I mean, it's just speculation.
It's why whenever Trump claimed that he was being audited by the IRS, I'm just being honest, I didn't believe him. I think he was full of shit on that.
Oh, well, I mean, he was being audited by the IRS for sure. They did not like Trump, but that could be due to the fact that, he had some pretty inept people working for him, as we kind of found out, right, over a 4-year term. Garrett, with Ivy League schools getting cash for their schools from the state, my guess is you want public funding cut out due to fairness, right? I didn't actually hear you use that word, but that kind of seemed to be one of the cruxes of your argument, was that, look, this isn't really fair. Okay, it's not a fair system. These rich kids can go get the best quality education ever, and everybody else is kind of priced out of it, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
And if you have criticism for it, go for it.
But the problem is that, you want the rich to pay the most in taxes, so why shouldn't they benefit from their taxes, considering they're paying the most?
Benefits of living in a free society. Well, free in quotes.
Oh, I mean, so I want you to know what I call progressive doublespeak, right? So from my perception, what you think you just said was, this is what you need to pay to participate in this wonderful society. All I hear is, give me your shit. That's that's what I hear when you say that is give me your stuff.
So I think, like I've heard a lot of different arguments for a lot of different tax systems, and what seems to be the most fair is, and if I'm wrong, I have a problem being corrected, so go for it. Is that the flat tax, like everyone is just taxed at the same rate, and if you are under the poverty line, like I think it should just be zero. And I think, see, I get stuck.
It already is zero.
Oh, see, there you go.
Yeah,
But
it already is zero. So I mean,
I get stuck with the middle class because like income tax fucks the middle class over hard.
Oh yes,
a lot harder than the rich. So do you then say, well, the middle class should only pay 10% instead of 20%, and should the rich?
But this is because of the progressive graduated tax system, where they say, "Oh, you make $250,000, we'll tax you like you make $1 million," right? These tiers are all kinds of jacked up, right?
Yeah, I don't think that there's a perfect system, and I don't have a good solution for it right now. Yeah, I'm just being honest.
Yeah, no problem, man. This, part of the Q&A process with the moderators, sometimes we have to use it in order to catch people on being evasive or things like that. This was very good faith discussion. So we can just have a little bit of banter and shit talking and have a little bit of fun with it, right? So the last follow-up to this is, what about those rare people who are hyper intelligent and are able to go to these prestigious schools due to public grants that are given to those schools? They want to go to those schools because they're the best. Wouldn't you prefer yourself right now a Harvard degree to a state college degree?
If I found a way to secure funding for it, then sure. But are those public grants coming from the federal government?
Yeah, in some cases they do.
Yeah, see, that's a hole in my hypothesis in my proposal for sure, and I would have to think about that one.
Okay, no problem. Let me. Yeah, he says, this guy in the chat, he goes, "You can't have fun banter. This is Twitch."
Right.
Good point. Let me get to the super chats. So this first guy's like, "I'm not even sending you one because this guy is so friggin' boring." That's what I'm kidding. He didn't say that. I'm just being a jerk. He says, "If you aren't intelligent enough to work through college, you probably shouldn't be in college. Climb cell phone towers, clean sewers, or do anything overnight. I have 3 degrees, 0 debt. Shove your sub-doctorate degree up your ass." I feel like he really wanted to deliver a message to you, Garrett.
I think he did.
Yeah. But luckily he spent good money to make sure that the message got through. And it did, right? Never say on the Crucible, we won't put the message, we'll put it through, right?
Hey,
Omar at the
bring it on.
Yeah, Omar at the very beginning of this, I got to pull his super chat up because it was like way, way, way back. Now, I usually have moderators who they snap screenshots of the questions. So, I don't have to do this shit. But we'll do it the old-fashioned way. So, Third Rail with Omar for $5 says, "Government freeze the interest on loans, forgive the interest, and people should pay the principal." So what about that, Rob? That's a really, really good compromise, isn't it?
That is a good compromise.
Hey,
I didn't think about one.
We gave you all that money. That's true. And we do deserve to have it back. But why do they have to give you an interest rate? That seems kind of fucked up, doesn't it?
An argument could be made, but that money's still going to come from somewhere, right? Right. So it's not just like we say, "Oh, we forgive the interest," and then no one's paying it whatsoever. That money just disappears, right? But I do think, in spirit, that if the government's getting involved in things like this, then it should have been a controlled interest rate or no interest rate whatsoever. It's not a bad proposal. I would be in favor of getting maybe that's a transitionary period to get the government out of this in the first place. This is a step that we would go in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of problems that are attached with this. We still would consider this people kind of defaulting on their obligations. At the end of the day, you signed that paperwork. That paperwork said the monies you would have to pay back. And why wouldn't we say the same for all sorts of other things then? If we're going to forgive interest and just make people pay back the principal, why wouldn't we say the same with mortgages? You know, and that would benefit more poorer people and more people that are doing things that are beneficial to the country because they're probably building families and things like that if they have a mortgage for the house. So, yeah, in general, it's probably any sort of forgiveness like this.
But just to give you a little bit of pushback on that, Rob, right? There are a lot of different things for mortgages, like the first-time home buyers, the FHA loan, right? Which is a federally backed loan to the first-time home buyer. There's no doubt that those loans have helped millions of people get into houses. Why do we need to charge them interest?
It's an interesting question, right? Like it depends on, primarily because we're using third-party banks for a lot of this stuff, right? That's primarily what it is. It's not just the government
kill
dole.
The bank, Rob, right?
I'm not. You're preaching to the choir. I mean, I've said this all along. Like, consider that. Why doesn't anyone talk? Who's at fault for this? Who's the primary person or group that's at fault? Is it the bank? Is it the government? Is it the student? If you say it's not the student, to me, the group that's next at fault is the school. They're the ones providing the shittier and shittier product and charging more and more for it. So if anyone should be left holding the bag, we should say, okay, if we're going to forgive these loans because the schools promised a quality of product which they didn't deliver, and they gouged people because the government was getting involved, we will take out of their endowments the price for these students to have their loans forgiven or their principal to be paid, etc. That to me would seem more judicious than making the American taxpayer pay it. It's the schools themselves. Why does no one ever talk about how horrible people continue? And I mean primarily on the left, they continue to say, well, we need to pay for everyone to be able to go to these schools. It's ironic. It's the same sort of shit I saw with Obamacare. Like, these left narratives don't make sense. The narrative with Obamacare, remember the movie Sicko came out? And it was, these damn evil insurance companies, they're so evil. And Obama stepped in and goes, I'll fix the bastards. We'll force every American to buy their product. What? Like, it's the same with this. It's like, well, we'll forgive everyone's loan and the government will pay for you to go to these shitty universities. And the universities are like, okay, that sounds wonderful to us. We'll jack up costs, no problem. You know, so make them pay.
Next question, I got to tell you. Here's a story that nobody's going to want to hear, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Okay? So, all right. So Garet will back this up. Don't forget the word actually. Yeah, Garet, actually. Okay, so Garet will back this up. Nobody in my Discord listens to me, and it's not even my Discord. They basically just booted me out, and I'm just allowed to be there sometimes if they let me. Okay, he knows he's there, right? They never. So I just told the mods to ban this guy, right? And I think the mods were going to ban me instead. That's what I think that they were. I honestly think that was their plan. I think that they like this guy absolute death better than they like me. Swear to God. You know, I tell you to ban the guy, you don't take me seriously just because I'm kidding. It's a bunch of bullshit. At the Crucible for Garet, if there was a student loan that met your criteria to be canceled and that student loan was given privately, should it still be taken care of? That's a hell of a good question.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, I think it should be forgiven. And the reason is because it would fit the criteria that I outlined. I think that to say otherwise would not be logically consistent.
But that's a whole new can of worms.
Well, yeah, that's a bad bullet to bite, man. Now you're going to go after private entities and they can't get their money back either.
I mean if I look, it's not like my proposal is going to be implemented anyways. Like, these are just the ideas that I have.
Well. Right, but the problem is, this is fundamentally the problem. We look at these things on a grandiose scale. So I'm sure all three of us could say at some point, fuck Goldman Sachs, fuck a bunch of these investment banks, right? We get that. But look at it more on a micro level of what we're actually saying. If I give Andrew $1,000 and he promises me, if you give me this $1,000 at the end of the year, I'll pay your $1,000 back plus give you $100 extra. That's a system that we understand is valuable in our country because your future earnings, if you get that money, if you invest prudently, are going to be worth more than the $1,000 today. So I'm getting something. My incentive to give him is my guaranteed bonus $100, and he's getting something in that he invests that to create a business, to get education, etc., which allows his earning potential to be higher. If the government comes in and says, you know what, Rob, you gave that money to Andrew, but he did such a good fucking job with that money, you could go eat shit. We're forgiving it, you're not getting it back. Like, that would be insane. And so then the alternative would be the government says, well, we'll pay you back instead. But then, now you have all of these people that are paying taxes that are on the dole for the service that Andrew received. So, I mean...
he says, made by Jim Bob, Jubilee, bitches! Right? You know what that is, right? Right? Yeah. All debts will be forgiven, right?
I've heard this argument before, yeah.
I care more about being logically consistent than having to bite a bullet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that there is still a logical, consistent position to say if it's state money and it's tax money, then it's different to say that it'd be forgiven than to say. I still think that could be a logically consistent position, right?
Okay.
I think. A fair point. I understand the difference. Now I understand people could say there's some tension there, but I think that that's something that I see the difference in.
I'm just trying to be as honest as possible.
Yeah, it's
a good policy. So what is this? Some of the questions that came through were a bit incoherent. I'm sorry, guys. Just bear with me for a second. Oh yeah, that's a good one too. So Rob, would you say that the United States should be able to forgive itself debt?
It's an interesting question. What is the debt in the first place, right? Right. So the debt.
Who has to pay the United States' debt?
Right.
We do.
It's a very interesting. Like, isn't it funny how we're duped into making these things more complicated? With the, for example, it's government property. Well, what is the government? Fundamentally, what is government? Government's just us collectively coming together and saying, well, we will pool resources and we'll have people be stewards of those pooled resources that we call politicians or government agents. But it's our land, right? When we say government land, it's our land. When we say government debt, it's our debt. That's what it is. So can we forgive ourselves our debt? Well, the problem is the debt's fluid. So who's paying it today is different than who's reaping the benefits tomorrow and things like that.
Aren't you paying your grandpappy's debt, Rob?
In a sense, right? And it's why I think that it's funny to see a lot of left-wingers morally grandstand about the children in the past couple weeks, which, don't get me wrong, there were situations that warranted talking about the importance of keeping children safe. But I always found it an immoral proposition to have massive debt spending because we're not the ones who pay it back. It's our children. It's our children's children. So can they just snap their fingers and say forgive? Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? What are the institutions? How exactly was this money given out in the first place? And I'll plead ignorance on the exact process in a very detailed version of exactly what banks are used by the federal government to ensure that these loans go out to people. What are the third parties that are collecting?
The Federal Reserve Bank.
Well, the Federal Reserve prints the money and stuff, but
they also control monetary policy. So the banks can order up money whenever they want to loan it out. And the Federal Reserve donates, they don't donate it, right? Even though they kind of do.
They loan it.
Yeah, they use a fractional reserve model. So the bank can loan up to 10 times the amount that the bank actually has, and the Federal Reserve basically is the guarantor for that. So it's the system it's messed up to begin with because
I understand all that, but my question is when it comes to student loans specifically. Now there are agencies that the federal government goes through, right? Like they have institutions set up.
One agency, they go through the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve sets interest rates and monetary policy. Essentially, the power of the purse should be in the hands of Congress, but they basically allowed a private entity to have it.
So the note holder of my student loan debt is just literally the Federal Reserve.
Ultimately, the people would be printing the money so that was loaned to you is yes.
But my understanding was that there were third parties involved, right?
Well,
particularly when it comes
parties, but they're all given their money by this one organization.
Right. Well, that I understand. But then it becomes a complicated process because it's like, well, if we forgive this, what happens to those third parties? Right? Like, where does it? Are they just going to print the money? Garet says, no, we would take the money from elsewhere. But you can see it becomes very complicated. It's not just a situation where, like, you run down to the DMV and get a check, you know?
So maybe think about it this way. What if you were to say to the Federal Reserve, hey, no, Congress will start coining money instead of you now, right? And Congress can set monetary policy. I think that then Congress could forgive whatever debts and loans that they wanted to, right? They could set the interest rate without using think tanks. There might be a workaround for this. Ron Paul has been trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Oh, I'm with him. Yeah.
Since Ron Paul started speaking, a couple of years after coming out of the womb, that was his first words, right? Abolish the Fed, right? That was Ron Paul's first words out of his mouth. I guarantee it. This one I'm saying.
Didn't he run on that when he was campaigning for president?
Absolutely.
It's one of the
audit the
things.
Fed.
In fact, Trump. No, it wasn't Trump. It was Bush. It was Jeb Bush who said it was interesting some of the arguments that Ron Paul brought to the table about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve it's entrenched in everything because it can set not just interest rates, you know what I mean, but the effect on monetary policy is insane because of those interest rates. So they can, like Alan Greenspan basically had a magic lever, right? He could be like, well, we're going to contract the money supply and that'll do X to interest rates, or we'll increase the money supply and that'll do X to interest rates. I mean, they can really jack the entire economy all to hell in no time at all. And they basically have no oversight and they've never really been audited, and it's a mess. So I think we got to start at zero here, right?
I don't disagree, but I think that the student loan process is different. I think, and I could be wrong, that what's happening is the federal government is guaranteeing these loans, but the loans are coming from private banks. So when I pay back my loan, it says Wells Fargo. That's who I'm paying my student.
But the loan wouldn't be able to come from those private banks if they weren't guaranteed through the Fed.
Exactly.
And they are the ones who order the money. So the Fed could contract the money supply and starve the bank of that money if they wanted.
Well, absolutely. But when we come to a discussion of forgiving the student loan debt, what that means is that the government's not going to say, sorry, bank, you don't get your money back.
No,
the government's going to say, we're going to pay, which is exactly what I'm talking. So it's not, so the question that you asked, can the government forgive its own debt?
It's government backed. So if you default on your loan, who pays it now?
Well, I agree, but we're talking about the percentage of people that default versus the government paying it all.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's a fair caveat. I'm just saying, like, if
the government shouldn't be involved.
Yeah, if you were going to incur, like, let's say a ridiculous number, like $1 trillion worth of debt, wink, wink, right? Maybe the best way to incur that wouldn't be through foreign wars, but maybe to forgive people their student loans. Like, if I had that choice, right, Rob? If I were like, foreign wars or debt forgiveness for student loans, if those were my two, I mean, which one would you choose?
Oh, that's a great point. And that was one of the selling points that even someone like me, who gets tired of this corruption I see in these foreign wars, could look at someone like Bernie and be like, if we're going to spend the money anyways, wouldn't you rather spend it at home? Problem is, all the squad, and Bernie included, voted for that $40 billion going to the military-industrial complex for Ukraine. So it's never as they always make it a tit for tat, but at the end of the day, you know what they say? Print, baby, print. Just print it. Just do it. We could do both. We could fund the wars and spend trillions of dollars to give a bunch of people money in this country that ends up trickling to Amazon,
It ain't their great grandkids, Rob.
That's right.
Like, I feel like you're being a little hard on them. You know what I mean? It's like they say, we shouldn't let dead men rule us, right? You hear that out of the left a lot. It's like future people are dead men right now, right? You shouldn't let them rule us either. You saddle the little bastards with debt as much as you can give them. Screw
I am once again asking for my grandchildren to pay for my spending, says Bernie. Good job.
Raise the birth rate just for that.
That's right. Small Fry for $5 says, there you go, Rachel Wilson. That was $5 for my student loan. And we'll take it, Wally, and we will spend it on alcohol just like you would have as a student. Thanks so much, all you guys out there in Crucible Chatland. We appreciate it. Rob, shout your channel out. Tell everybody where they can find you one more time.
Yeah, so I primarily stream almost every weeknight between 9 and 10 p.m., 9, 10, or 11 p.m. starting on twitch.tv/Rob Noor. As you see it spelled up there, ROBNOERR, all one word. Also on YouTube, Odyssey, DLive, under Normal America with Rob Noor. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Noor, Noerr, and then Robert afterwards. So 3 R's in a row. I don't know why I chose that stupid ass name, but I did. So you can follow that on Twitter. And yeah, as always, best place to debate's the Crucible. Most fair moderation, most likable people. So it was great to be here, and I had a lot of fun debating you tonight, Garrett.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Rob. Rob Noor is coming back to defend his belt for the randomizer shortly. He's also got some big debates lined up later in this month. Those are going to be excellent. Garrett, take a second, shout yourself out, shout your brand new channel out. Make sure you tell everybody that the Crucible is awesome so that we can clip it and somehow humiliate you with it. I don't know how we're going to do that yet, but rest assured it's going to happen. Go ahead, Garrett.
Not a problem. I'm okay with that. So my channel is called Heathens because Andrew's a dick. And
Clip it.
at least he recognizes it, right? Like that's fine. Rob, I did give you a follow on Twitter. Just I don't know if you noticed that or not, but
I did not, but I'll follow back. Yeah.
Unless I thought I did and didn't actually do that, but if I didn't and I'm saying I did, I will fix that. So my channel is called Heathens. This will be once I download this video from YouTube and then upload it on my channel. It'll be the 3rd debate that I've done.
And so your first DMCA strike for stealing our content. You brought. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Bastards. Anyways, this was a lot of fun. I think it went very well. I did my best for being such an inexperienced debater, and I hope I'm back. I hope I'm welcome back.
Well, of course you are, right? I mean, we
I'm looking forward to it.
We gotta have people around here to kick around, Garrett. And you're like Crucible royalty, right? I'm kidding, guys. Tomorrow is going to be a hell of a debate. We've got
it is.
Lucy the lunatic. I mean, Lucy. I don't really know how to really describe Lucy, but Lucy will be on here with Fabian Liberty of all people, to talk about the effects of communism on gender. Can't wait for that debate.
That's gonna be crazy.
Gonna be fun. I can't wait to see everybody back here for the community debates going on all week, right here on the Crucible. Like and subscribe, mash the like button, do all that shit that my people keep telling me I have to market to you to do, even though I hate doing it. But make sure that you guys do the right thing. From the Crucible to everybody out there in Chatland, have a great night. Rob, stick around. See you guys later. Hey man, hey, that was a lot of fun. That was a kind of a fun little thing to throw. We've been trying to organize that for a couple of months, try to get some of the more top tier people to just have at it with people in the community, so that they saw that you're a people and not these evil shrouded monsters that a lot of them think you are. You know what I mean?
Right. I thought Garrett did better than 80% of the people I debate. So, like,
right,
I think that he should absolutely have confidence to be able to debate other people on other sides. He's good faith. That puts you ahead of 50% of the people. He's willing to think about a position, and he's approaching. One of the things I value more than anything when I'm watching or interacting with someone is someone who thinks differently, who thinks like an individual. I think you could certainly say that of him. He brought things up I'd never thought of, and I was like, yeah. So I had a lot of fun. I thought it was great.
I'm being told we're still live somehow.
Uh-oh.
That's weird.
Shit. I better keep my shirt on then,
Yeah, I know. That's odd. I don't see anything that says I'm live.
Sometimes like YouTube lags a little, so it might still show you as live. Let me check. Let's see if you show up as live on.
That's the message I just got. All caps are like,
Let's take a look.
"You're still live." No, it doesn't look like it's live on my end.
Nah, I don't see you live on my end.
No, I think he's just tripping. I don't know.
Figures. But no, it was a lot of fun. And I think it's a great idea that you're doing this. I'm predicting. I don't know who.
It says I'm still live. He's watching the convo in real time. Yeah, I wonder if he's watching it from your channel.
He probably is. He's probably watching my channel.
Are you watching Rob North's channel, Chicken?
Because it says ended even at the top of the screen here. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's supposed to be live right now.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's probably what's happening. But
yeah, he says, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, that makes sense. This dude's probably like, "What the fuck are they?" I clearly see them.
You're gonna have to clip yourself getting owned. You're gonna have to clip yourself getting owned and put it on the Clips channel. My Clips guy just owned himself, and now he's got to clip himself.
That is funny. That is some funny shit. That is great. Yeah, he's definitely on my chat right now. He's like, laugh my ass off. That's great.
I mean, you should cope for that, and you should seed for that one, Chicken. He's like, he's trying to get the message to me, right? He's like, "You're still alive. Holy God, don't say anything you're not supposed to do. As a member of your PR team, whatever you do."
Here we go.
He's like, he doesn't realize this is all planned, right?
That's funny. That's good stuff.
Good.
I'm predicting tomorrow night's debate, if I know Fabian, probably be a little more intense than tonight. If I had to guess. Yeah. That sounds like a good topic. I'll be watching. I think it's
on the first day of Pride, right? So
it's
you
great.
gotta kick it off with a bang, bro.
Why not? Hey man, last year at this time I was on the front page of Reddit as the most trans positive conservative out there.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that because of the robot brains, right?
Right.
I heard to take a brain, put the one brain into the other robot, and this and that. What would be the? Yeah, I remember that bullshit.
Yeah.
That was that was the Destiny debate.
Yeah, it was stupid, but yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Looking forward to. I hope that I have some big debates lined up. I would love to debate some bigger people. I talked to Destiny the other day. He was half asleep. But one of the little jab that I got in that I wanted to talk to him about, I was like, "You still up for that Burisma debate?" He said yes. But looking forward to. He said he wants to debate me on Hunter Biden working for Burisma, and that he doesn't think it was corrupt, and I clearly think it was corrupt. And I said I would be more than willing to have that debate in a moment's notice with you. So the last time I debated him on Politically Provoked, he said we'll have to have that debate some other time, and I've been pestering him like once a month since then, like, "Hey man, you ready for that debate?" And haven't got much trying to bait the hook, but haven't got much action on it. Tried it today with Vosh too. I was tweeting at him, but I didn't get any. Those comments he made were pretty harsh about violence.
The thing is it's really hit or miss with these guys. I haven't quite figured out what it is, but I think some of it is a lot of these guys, they run like a grinder machine, right? These really large channels, they need a continuous flow of idiots to come in that they can grind up and spit out. And that's what a lot of the appeal to those channels is humiliating stupid people. If you start surrounding yourself with too many smart debaters who challenge you all the time, well, I mean, what's the that kind of defeats the point of the machine, right?
Well, and you do it if the smart person has a bigger audience than you, right? So if I'm coming in with Hassan numbers, Vosh would be like, "Yeah, I'll debate you," because he gets something out of it. But if it's someone much smaller than you, what do you have to gain? Now, if you're me, I don't give a shit about that because I like the argument. I like the discussion, right? So I'll debate someone like Garet, and then the next day I would debate someone like Hassan. Their numbers,
I thought about that. And I think that that's actually the incorrect way to look at it. They do get a lot out of it. They get a lot more than you think. They get great content. And if you notice that these guys, they have almost a specific style debate channel, right? So that if you look at their content's sent up into their reacts and their this and then their debates. And not many people go into the debate the debate portion of that channel. They don't keep all of them. They only keep some of them. So having those really great debates in there, in those debate channels, I think that is necessary for their channel's growth and for, their livelihood, really. Because at the end of the day, all of politics is just a giant debate. It's a giant moral debate, right?
To phrase it that, I don't know that they're looking at it that way, but you're right. That's the net. But for example, when I go on and I debate Destiny, his chat's always like, better than that guy that was dressed like corn, right? Like, at least there's coherent thoughts coming out of this guy. Now, here's the beauty.
Jake,
yeah,
corn man.
I've never dealt with him, but the beauty of it is,
I thought he was a banana. Right? Like, what do I fucking know? I was calling him the banana man. He's like, it's corn. I said, really? We have to make like, who cares what it is? You know what I mean?
Isn't the word corn and banana just socially constructed? Define exactly what corn is and what banana is. If corn wants to be a banana, isn't it a banana? So, I don't know. But, what I see is that people... you do have to admit, it's one thing. You know this. There are people that you value as... There are people that could call me and be like, I want to debate you on this. And I'd be like, sure, give me 5 minutes. Let's go. Yeah. Right? Then there are other people where I'd probably still do it, but I would know, like, this person's going to have some shit to say. Like, Synth's a good debater. If Synth had a month to prepare for a debate and I had 5 minutes, I'm going to be on the back foot. I understand that, right? If I debate someone whose entire debate over and over is the economy or it's... puberty blockers or something like that. They're going to have a bunch of evidence. That doesn't mean that they'll win the debate. It doesn't mean that they'll have the ideologically best argument, but they're going to be prepared for it. I got to be honest, last week, man, my shows were on fire because I was just taking calls from random people. I mean, and some of them are just dumber than a box of rocks. I had some dude call in who I've talked to before who's a big white privilege, Black Lives Matter type guy. It took me all of 30 seconds to get this guy to admit he wants to take guns away from black people. Is it like 30 seconds? He's like, we got to take guns away from people with mental illnesses because anything to protect the kids. I said, don't more kids die of gun violence in inner city black neighborhoods? Yep. So shouldn't we take guns away from those people? Yep. And I'm just like, 30 seconds. That's what it took to get that's good content for me. It's like, damn, this guy looks like a genius. It's not that I'm a genius, it's that guy's a moron. That's what it is. But I look good by proxy,
I think in some ways, too, the content war is counterproductive. While I understand what they're trying to do, right, and they have like 12 hours a day to fill or 13 hours a day to fill or whatever, it becomes counterproductive to them. Because there really is only so much shit to talk about and so much insight that you're going to have into something. All right. And it's like, a lot of these guys don't even prepare. They just talk. And they can talk. Boy, can they, without saying anything for hours and hours and hours and hours. And people just eat that shit up. And that's why this whole sphere is so filled with such shit ideas and shitty takes and people saying stupid things that don't make any sense. Well, they're hearing it from people who didn't think about it to begin with. They were just on a stream or caught in a moment where they're just talking to fill airtime, right? Somebody catches it. They think that they said something profound. They run with it. Then they run into somebody who goes, what the fuck are you talking about? And suddenly the whole narrative changes, right? They're like, I guess maybe I didn't mean that way.
Right, and then they don't want to talk to that person again, right? Because that's what I'm saying. I'll say that about Vosh. I know he debates on your channel. You don't have to say anything, but I'll say that. The interactions I've had with him on panels, he doesn't want to debate me one-on-one. I know it. So we'll see. Maybe he'll change his mind, but he don't want to. How's he going to debate someone competent on him saying basically we should shoot people that are legally open and carrying? What's the debate even? Why does it have to be me? It could be anyone with half a brain could look at him and be like, how the fuck could you say that? Like,
I need you to understand that my criticisms of Bosch are not withheld simply because he'll debate on the Crucible or Destiny or any of the progressives. The Crucible is a place where it's a neutral platform when the debaters are there. My personal criticisms of them don't matter afterwards. Like, I'm more than happy to say that Bosch is a degenerate communist, okay? Because he's a degenerate communist. But when he's here, he's going to get a fair debate. just like anybody would get a fair debate.
I agree. But I'm not saying you won't. I'm not saying that you wouldn't criticize him anyway. What I'm saying is there's different types of criticism. There's a criticism of the arguments you make are shit, or the way you argue is shit. Of course, anyone would say that, and of course, I've heard you say that over and over again. But then the actual setting up of debates and stuff like that gets into murkier ground. Right? Like, does this person want to debate this person? I could see a vested interest in a channel that's interested in having different people on to say, I don't have a comment on what's going on behind the scenes or my feelings of, did this person want to debate this person and things like that. So that's what I'm saying. I hope that you're treating Vosh the same as Destiny, the same as me, the same as Synth, the same as Zen, right? You should be. That's what makes your platform a good platform. But I'm just saying my personal feeling is, you don't want to debate me. That's my personal feeling, and I don't need you to go into it. That's how I feel, and I understand why he would think that, because it's just like you said. It's easy to have these bullshit. And look, people, I could do it. You could do it. We could. As soon as we do the randomizer debate, you'll see it. I could take positions that I massively disagree with and make them sound good. Here you go.
We literally saw you make a better case for communism than 90% of the communists that I've had on, because you've heard it over and over. Destiny is also a great one for the randomizer. I think that he would do an equally good job at taking the opposition position, because he trolls that way constantly, right? Just because it is funny, right? Like let's it's funny.
It is.
But I think what we're seeing now, there is a paradigm shift that's happening. The right wing is becoming a little bit more prevalent in these spaces again, but that's not going to last a long time, Rob. The pendulum will swing back, and Vader, the Empire will strike back, right? And there will be another purging and another mass exodus of the right from these spaces. And one of the things that is very curious to me is that now, essentially, by most of these left-wingers, Destiny's considered a right-wing apologist, and he is a progressive motherfucker. This guy is progressive, and that's still not good enough. It's like, at what point is it just like all absurdity must be allowed, or else you're a right winger?
Yeah, I mean, it's like that. It's, dude, I use as a baseline. So I had the good fortune, policy debate in college was shit in 99,000 ways that I could tell you about. But the idea of forcing yourself to argue positions you don't agree with, there's value in that. There really is.
Oh, yeah.
And so, that was kind of one of the fundamental things of policy debate. Half the time you're affirmative, half the time you're negative. Now, you could always argue the same thing if you were clever, but I like to argue positions I didn't believe. One of my debate partners, my friend Tom, he was also my campaign manager. Tom's a Democrat. I talk to him almost every day about politics. He has positions me and you would massively disagree with, but even he's like, well, something will happen, like he's pro-choice for the first trimester, right? So Roe v. Wade's being overturned. He's like, oh boy, this will be a big victory for Democrats. And 3 days later, he's texting me back like, well, so much for that fucking shit. They're all insane. They're now talking about 9-month abortions, or after, maybe we should have sensible gun control. Well, here comes Biden to say get rid of 9mm, and like, that's what he recognizes as well. He's like, where's the party for the moderate lefty? Right? Because at this point, if you're on the left and you don't kiss the ass of the most extreme leftists, then they throw you out of the party. They say, well, you're not in the left. You're a right winger. And we're going to treat you the same as we would treat Rob, that we'll treat Andrew, that we'll treat Richard Spencer, that we'll treat Nick Fuentes. Destiny's treated as if he's Nick Fuentes to these extreme left-wing people. And it's laughable. It's absolutely laughable to, think that those two people politically, now there's some stylistic choices, I think, you could make comparisons, but their ideology is massively different,
Yeah, I think we just got the gauntlet thrown down, actually. It's a duo debate with Sonzel and Bunk. They want to do a debate on the Crucible. I think it's a far and away time for another BPF Rob Nord team up. We haven't had one since the JF Gary Effie, and I just can't think of a better person that I want to smack around than Sonzel and friends, right? Sonzel and co. They've got it coming, Rob.
What's the topic? What do they want to debate?
Who cares?
Xenogenders?
It's Sonzel and co. Yeah. Well, xenogenders would be great.
We should defend xenogenders. Me and you should defend xenogenders against Sonzel. We'd crush him.
Yeah.
Just make him.
Well, the thing is that I noticed that his paradigm has kind of shifted a bit
Yep.
on gender, but I noticed that the ethos of a lot of people's mindset on gender has shifted, not just since the arguments have been introduced, but since the absurdity has been introduced, where we've gotten to the point of just sheer madness. You know,
It's different than
you can't move away.
Right. It's different than what I'm about to say, but I see similarities. You remember, like, this is hard to even talk about. I hope this isn't against TOS. You remember Alex Jones with Sandy Hook, right? Right, and then seeing him on Joe Rogan's show afterwards, and he was like, "Look, here's the problem. I see all of these conspiracy theories that he truly believes are legitimate, but the problem he makes is everything's a conspiracy theory, right? Like once you're so deep down that rabbit hole, it's everything. Like everything. Oh, there's a tornado in Joplin, Missouri. Must have been the government created that tornado. No, tornadoes do just happen. They do. And I think that Alex Jones realized, like, okay, I went too far. Once everything, that's where
the weather devices that they use.
Right, HARP. It was the HARP. Yeah. God damn it! Up in Alaska, they got that HARP facility. It's turning the frogs gay. It's
the boner pills.
It's damn boner pills.
Alex Jones sounds like the dude from Sling Blade. If the dude from Sling Blade had an average IQ, right? That's what Alex Jones sounds like, and spoke like he was on meth, right?
Right. If he was more animated,
like he was on meth. Yeah. That's what Alex Jones sounds like. And he didn't used to. If you go and you watch his early stuff, when he was like in his 20s, he had this kind of more of a high-pitched voice and this and that. But I just think from years of screaming and screeching into the microphone, it eventually turned his voice that raspy. You know what I mean?
He's slowly turning into.
I mean, that's my conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah. Chris Barnes from like Cannibal Corpse. That'll be by the time Alex Jones is 70, he'll just be like death metal.
Death metal right now.
Oh, of course.
Right? Of course. Do some death metal with that voice now. It's nails on a chalkboard now, that voice.
But Alex Jones, interdimensional vampire sucking the souls, but I think his realization of that is similar to what like a lot of people on the left are realizing, right? Like they were like that the slippery slope stuff's all bullshit, and I'm gonna argue this and this, and then someone was like, "Yeah, so you're right about this transgender issue, and that's why I think I'm a Mirkwood elf," and he's like, "What? And Destiny's going through the same shit, and it's like once you start to go down this rabbit hole, and then I think what happens is you realize, like, geez, maybe I had some batshit crazy ideas that I need to reevaluate because I didn't see like how crazy this would become. This. I mean, Vosh is out there today. I saw him out there tweeting today, like, I still yet to get a convincing argument from a conservative to define woman. I've yet to have a convincing argument. And it's like, you're so full of shit. You're just full of shit, right? And if you truly believe, how do you define human then? How can you define any objective standard then? Because you could say, well, there could always be an exemption, right? If I asked him to define human, like, he would be like, give me a bunch of characteristics, and he would say, 32 chromosomes, blah, 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 blah. Oh, what about people that have chromosomal defects? Are they no longer human? Well, I guess we'd say they're human. Well, therefore, the turtle's human if the turtle thinks it's human, right? Like, no, one does not lead to the other. And, Destiny tweeted out the other day, he retweeted someone saying, this is going to be tough because I'm on Twitter. I'm just quoting here. Someone saying, trans men are biological men. Right? And Destiny was like, isn't this the straw man that conservatives use? To which I responded, it was never a straw man. This was always the logical progression. This was where it was going. You didn't see it. And so, when I got to talk to Destiny the other day, I was like, do you take any irony in the fact that, your debate with me with trans and how I was trans-positive conservative, the same crew that was like mocking me for that's the crew that threw you under the bus and got you kicked off. Is there any irony there? And he didn't really want to talk about it.
I did enjoy pointing that out several times. I did. I'm not going to lie.
Me too.
I did enjoy pointing out multiple times that you created this, right? That you created this house and it fell on your head. You know what I mean? It was bad carpentry work on his part because he enabled it to happen, and he did enable it to happen, and many of them did, and they ended up destroying him over it. You know what I mean? Now that's an oversimplification. There's more to it than that, but essentially that's what happened.
And there was this story. I saw this, right? So debate was the radical left. The shit that we're seeing now was being talked about in debate in 2004, 2005, like all this shit. I won't mention any names. I doubt anyone's listening that knows these people, but I'll just make it real quick. The school, Fort Hays, was largely responsible for starting a lot of this crazy shit, and they had this particular head coach. Like, this coach didn't believe in shoes. He was super hippie, like postmodernist, like very strange dude. But he started all this, performative debate, rapping, you don't have to follow, everything's neocolonialism, blah, 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 right? And he started this. Long story short, in about 2008, 2009, I can't remember, his team was debating a team, I believe, from Towson that were radical black activists. The whole debate became, each team it was the championship of the second biggest national tournament. The whole debate became each team got to eliminate one judge, so there's a pool of 7 judges. Each team gets to take one out. Fort Hays took out the only black woman, who happened to be the head coach of Pitt. And so the whole debate became, you're racist because you took the black woman out. After the debate, the black woman comes in, starts screaming at Fort Hays' coach because Fort Hays loses. And Fort Hays' coach is saying all this shit that we argued against him for a decade over. Rules matter. Our team worked really hard. It's unfair to just accuse them of being racist. This is bullshit. What does our strategic decision to eliminate a judge that we knew didn't like us have to say about our projection of race, blah, blah, blah? And every conservative, all like 3 of us are just like, like, yes, you created this, and now it's eating you alive. And what he did was he mooned her. He pulled his pants down and mooned her, which made it onto CNN, which got him fired immediately, got the entire Fort Hays program completely eliminated. The woman from Pitt was banned from debate for a year. And the solution the debate community had to all this was stop filming debates. It wasn't, wow, we've gone batshit crazy, time to reevaluate. It was just stop letting people know what we're doing. Anyways, allegedly, a guy I knew talked to that Fort Hays coach years later, and that coach was like, I regret creating the monster that did that. I now understand that this was insane, and blah, blah. And it was sad that he had to lose a job, and it wasn't just that his team that worked hard lost the championship, he lost his job. The program got eliminated, and then he finally realized, oh shit, I created the monster that ate me. And, you feel bad, but at the same time, it's like, how could you not see? So when I see this shit happening to people like Destiny, and it'll come from Vosh. It will. It'll come from Ethan from H3H3. The list comes for all. It will come for them, and you just kind of sit there and shrug your shoulders, and you say, I don't know. Even if you believe this shit was an effective tool for you, didn't you just for sort of self-preservation understand that you should kind of push back against this a little because eventually it would come for you? Now we got the Groypers engaging in the same sort of insane bullshit. It's like, I mean, I don't know.
Of the right, right? The Antifa communists of the right.
Yeah,
they're
you
just
spot
as
on.
Insane, just as nutty. But I mean, you're absolutely right, and this is the air that we're breathing and the conflict that we're living in. Before I go, I do want to leave you with this thought, though, Rob, which is all of the current people who are doing the transel culture, as Mr. Girl calls it, right? Or the this batshit insane culture that's coming for not even moderate leftists, but hardcore leftists who just don't have extreme enough messaging. What is the next thing going to look like of the new grouping of people who comes to cancel those people? That's what I'm fucking terrified of. What is that messaging going to be? What possible extreme thing can they come up with to come to cancel this crop of cancelers? You know what I mean?
Well, I'm always trying to stay on the cutting edge. I saw Keffels say the other day that Destiny encouraged his fans to mock her genitals. And so I would like to think that the next group that's coming is, men that aren't well endowed, right? It's not the size of the boat, it's the motion of the ocean. And if you disagree with me, cancel your ass. How dare you mock the size of my genitals? But that's just a joke. But you know what it'll be. I mean, I can't take credit for this. Jordan Peterson said this. You know how this ends, right? This is all about victimhood and people saying my unique situation makes me a victim. At the end of the day, you know who the ultimate unique victim is? The individual. So where they're getting, eventually, is when they say, well, I'm aggrieved because I'm black, but I'm aggrieved because I'm black and gay, but I'm aggrieved because I'm black, gay, and trans, but I'm aggrieved because I'm black, gay, trans, and disabled, but I'm black, gay, trans, disabled, and Muslim, but I'm, and eventually at the end of the day, they'll get to such a ridiculous list that it's like, there is only one of this exact thing in the world, and it's me, and so I'm prejudiced against because no one's me. Yes, that's called the individual. You're right, and there's no one like me, and there's no one like Andrew. That's eventually where it goes. What we'll see as we get there will be a ad reductum infinitum of just insanity that we can't even contemplate now. One of the things that I say this all the time to people, we'll see what you think about this. I envision a movement 50 years from now that looks back at our generation after we're gone and will say things like this. They abused machinery. Do you know that they exploited their computers? They exploited their ovens. They exploited their vacuum cleaners, right? I can envision that. I can envision people saying, just like we say, oh, meat eaters, people that ate meat back there and didn't treat. We'll say the same thing about technology. It was exploitive. Now that AIs have come along, they were exploiting the sort of children of AI, and that we should cancel Andrew, even though he had some base points. He treated his computer like shit. So let's remove all scenes of him from the. I mean, who knows though? Scary thought.
I think that the next group that comes in, the Keffels cancelers, when it comes time for the Keffels is not the extreme cutting edge resistance anymore. I think that the next ones are the pedophiles, Rob.
It probably is.
I think that that's the next one.
I don't think
in 50 years they're going to look back and say, oh, they abused their machines. I think they're going to look back and be like, they didn't even have sex with kids, though. That's what I think they're going to be saying.
I mean, you could see it's rearing its ugly head. It's just, and again, I could argue with the socialist on Medicare for all. I could argue with the communist on should we eliminate private property. I don't know how I could approach someone in good faith that believes that. I can't. That's the line. I don't think that's a ridiculous statement to say that that's a line that everyone should.
Here's the thing, though, right? It's like, I want to agree with you, but I know that 12 years ago, somebody had come to you and said that you would be arguing somebody making the points like Keffels makes, that it would be unfathomable.
Right? I think you're right.
Unfathomable.
You're absolutely right. You're right. And I mean, you're right. I'm just saying that I could argue right now on a trans debate. If I wasn't on Twitch, I could argue it, right? And I wouldn't come away saying, I think this person's evil. I'm debating, Synth on a trans debate, and I'm like, Synth is evil I would think he's misguided. I think that, et cetera, et cetera. But if I'm debating someone that's like, I'm going to make the case for why intercourse between adults and children should be accepted, I could not look at that person and say, this is someone I could share a community with. I just have disagreement. To me, I think you're right. I think that you already see it starting.
It's coming.
Yeah. And
and by the way, 5 years from now, that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. And we'll be getting banned from Twitch and YouTube, right? Because we're saying this is heinous, this is unacceptable. They'll say, no, that's bigoted. That's a bigoted. Yeah, you're probably right. I hope not. I hope that the cultural shift becomes too much by that point, but I fear that you're probably right.
No, because once the new thing, which is the trans agenda, becomes so normalized that there's no more persecution in a way that can be easily indicated or pointed to, what else do they have left to point at?
Well, Chenk's got bestiality. Chenk's on that, right? I don't know if you ever saw that clip of the Young Turks.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that won't be an edgy enough statement, right? I'm telling you, it's going to be the maps. It's going to be these people. They're moving in. NAMBLA has been around for an awful long time, and I think that their day has come, and they're going to be pushing that agenda like no other. And I think that that's what you're going to see in the ethos in the next 5 years. And it's really going to come to prevalence in the next 2 years. And those are the crop of people who will be canceling the Keffels of the world. And they won't understand because they spent all this time getting their victim status, just like the former crop spent all that time getting their victim status just to get canceled, right? By the next crop. But this is where I'm just telling you, this is what's happening. We see it now. Like you see the the underpinnings, and you think this can't go anywhere. But that's what we thought about the the current crop, right? You're like, yeah, nobody's really going to buy into that, and it turns out, with a sufficient amount of propaganda and a sufficient amount of pummeling down opposition voices, it can get there.
Well, you know what's funny? And listen, I know me and you have had debates on gay marriage and things like that. And I've had to acknowledge, even though I still support gay marriage, I had to acknowledge that I used to lick at people would say, oh, if we legalize gay marriage, this would happen. I'm not saying that's what caused it. But the irony to me is, I'm not saying you specifically, but people that made that argument, I don't think you were extreme enough. I think that even the people that said slippery slope, their worst case scenarios and how fast it would come weren't accurate to how it was even worse than what they were suggesting. I mean, like you said, 5 years ago, if I said most major platforms,
I was the lone voice for 2 straight years saying
you were
that this is what's coming, and God help you when it gets here, and now it's here. And I do take some credit for that, because
you definitely deserve it.
I was pummeling this system, being laughed at, and now it seems to be no laughing matter, right? So I think I think you are right, and I remember sitting on the kill stream with Beardson Beardley and saying, "Stop this fucking racialist nonsense, you idiot! Even if all of it was true, there's nothing you could do about it now. Why waste your time? This is a fight we can actually win." And they dismissed it. No one will ever buy into any of that. You're stupid. You're this. And now here it is, right?
Now you're banned. Now you're banned if you disagree. Yep.
Yeah, in all of its glory. So I don't want to dive too much into it. And I know you got TOS concerns and things like this. Yeah. So what I'll say instead is, like, thanks for coming on tonight. Yep. I appreciate it. I'm going to get the hell out of here. Go have some dinner.
Hey, real quick, do you know when that randomizer debate's going to be?
I'll send you a DM on it.
Okay. Yep. All right, man.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Yep, take it easy. My friend, Big Papa Fascist there. Always fun to talk to. I mean, he is right about sort of that extremism. He was calling it early and often. So I'm going to wrap up here tonight. So let me say, I thoroughly enjoyed my discussion with Garet tonight. It wasn't a contentious debate. It started off like... Weirdly enough, like, it seemed like we were agreeing on 50% of shit to start with, and so we were kind of talking on the fringes. But I thought it was an interesting debate. I thought I did very well. I thought Garet did very well. I hope it was entertaining for everyone. Not every debate has to be sort of massively disagreeing. Sometimes it's nice to just work out conversations like that. I admit that I think there are way more interesting topics to talk about, like the Sussman trial, corruption, and things like that. It's difficult to find people that are interested in debating those sorts of things with me. So I continue to plug away. Hopefully we'll find someone that's willing to have those sorts of debates. But tomorrow night's show, it looks like probably looking around 10 p.m. I'll be at home. I should be home. It looks like it'll be just a me stream. Maybe I'll take calls. That's always good content. Just taking calls from random lefties. But yeah, I'm also consider it won't necessarily go against me on my time frame. The Crucible's got debates coming up all week, so yeah, consider checking those out. You can check their YouTube channel out. But great people that work over there. Crucible Clips is great. Pedro's great. Based Homeschool Mom's great. BPF's great. So I enjoy working with all those people. I think that's very professional, and yeah. But yeah, I mean, Aftershock said in the middle of my discussion with BPF, like, now people like Vosh want to debate people that they think that they could just bury. They don't want to debate good people. And you're right, Aftershock. That's absolutely true. That is true. It would probably benefit his channel to debate someone like me, because his audience, 95% of them are going to think he won anyways. And it's content. And, like, I'm not lying. When you see, go watch, like, when I'm on Debating Destiny, go look at the comments from those videos. People are like, this is the type of shit we want. You debating right-wingers. They might say I'm an asshole or I'm a piece of shit, but that's what his audience wanted. You know? So, but it's not so easy. It's not so easy to prepare for a debate like that. As I'm sure Destiny would admit. Vosh won't, but he sucks, so what do you expect? Let's find someone to raid. Let's do it. Oh, someone said I'm from Fort Hays area and you didn't know that story. Here, I'm not going to show the video because it's TOS, but I will show you the story to show that I'm not bullshitting you. I guess it was 2018. Kansas debate coach loses cool, moons room. A YouTube video of a Kansas professor mooning a room full of students and faculty during debate has led to 2 university investigations. Video shows Fort Hays debate coach in a profane, in-your-face argument with his counterpart from the University of Pittsburgh. The exchange took place in March at a competitive debate at Emory University. It was CETA Nationals, which is basically the second most prestigious tournament. Video shows Shanahan explode into a feral, expletive-laced tirade. The debate coach was caught on tape jumping around, gesticulating wildly before bending over and pulling down his khaki shorts, exposing his underwear. Tape was posted to YouTube August 2nd and had over 88,000 views by Thursday. In the video, Reed Brinkley criticized for his body language while students were debating. Fort Hays coach protested throughout the fight that he had the right to be involved in the course of the debate. Sometimes people care so much that it bubbles over, he said. I'm not ashamed of my behavior. I'm not backing down. So yeah, that really happened. I'm not making that up when I say that. That really happened. Ended up, like I said, the Pitt coach, I believe, was suspended for a year. The Fort Hays coach, I believe, was fired, and I believe the entire Fort Hays program was disbanded once sort of donors realized what that program was up to. But yeah, that happened. That was real. That's 2008. And I can see the crazy shit back then, so. But yeah, if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can check that out. Probably still find the video if you really wanted, though I'm not really interested in seeing someone pull their pants down. All right, we got CTV on. Fabian Liberty or Stardust. I'll leave you all decide. Oh, that's no problem. What do you guys think? Stardust, CTV, or Fabian Liberty? Fabian? Okay. You could ask him about his debate tomorrow night, where he'll be debating communism's effect on trans culture or something, gender culture or something like that. Good stuff. Good luck, Fabian. I think Fabian's a good debater. He'll keep it entertaining at least. So, all right, I had a lot of fun. Thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, not the topic I would have chosen for a debate, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time, which that's what it's all about. So I hope you enjoyed it as well. Special thanks to the Crucible and to Garet, who I thought was absolutely game. Garet, if you're watching, I don't think that you projected sort of maybe an uncertainty about yourself or a lack of confidence. I think that's unwarranted. I think you sounded very good, and I thought you made great points. I might disagree with them, but I thought you handled yourself quite well. So keep at it, man. And I don't say that as someone who's superior as you. I say that as someone who respected and enjoyed debating you. So I hope that you stick with it. So, all right, thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy this raid of Fabian. And as always, have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow night around 10.
People ruin their fucking chips all the time trying to eke out just a